2001 was a beast of a year for games. Perhaps one of the greatest years in gaming ever. Industry-defining games were dropping left and right, completely revolutionizing what video games should look like and what they can do. Halo Combat Evolved, Grand Theft Auto 3, Metal Gear Solid 2, Super Smash Bros. Melee, Silent Hill 2, Pokemon Gold and Silver, to name a few. And amongst all these games was a humble third-person shooter cleverly named Max Payne, named after its titular protagonist, from a relatively fresh and unknown Finnish game studio called Remedy Entertainment. Nowadays, Remedy are some legendary industry OGs, and still make some pretty fantastic games like Alan Wake 2 and Control, which I would highly recommend checking out if you haven't already. But in 2001, Remedy's only game so far had been a top-down racing combat game called Death Rally, aka Driving Through New Jersey Simulator. And their next game, Max Payne, will be a fully 3D third-person shooter with some unique mechanics that I'll explain later, and it's all cloaked in a dark and immersive tone and a unique neo-noir story. Expectations weren't super sky high, but this young studio is about to make a bigger splash than anyone at the time could have even imagined. And with Max Payne 1 and 2 remakes confirmed to be in development over in Remedy's Espoo Studios, I thought it would be, again, cool and fun, to take a look at the Max Payne series and rank the games to find out which is the true maximum pain god of the series. All of which is just my opinion, of course. And naturally, spoilers for the entire Max Payne franchise. After obtaining your copy of Max Payne and booting it up, you'll be in for some pain, alright. As out of the box, and at least on Steam for me, the game just doesn't fucking work. Launching the game or tutorial will ass blast you with these nondescript JPEG errors, and the music is also completely busted, and it's just refusing to play. Now the game came out in 2001, so this isn't totally unexpected. Running this game on Windows 10 or 11 is like trying to put a Honda engine in an Abrams tank, so some fixes need to be done. And luckily for us, there is a comprehensive community fix pack here that's available completely for free to get the game functioning properly. This fix pack contains HD textures, frame rate fixes for DirectX 9 or DirectX 11, audio fixes, true widescreen support, and all that other nerd shit to get this game into a playable state. Just be sure to select DG Voodoo's DX8 to DX11 fix, unless you're using DirectX 9, I suppose. All the DirectX 9 wrapper did was tank my frame rate for some reason. And also, in the Max Payne launcher itself, make sure that acceleration is set to D3D hardware instead of software. And once it's installed and you've said a prayer to the god you believe in for good luck, the game should work properly from there. Emphasis on should. But with all that technical chicanery done, we can actually, play the game now. And when we load it up, you'll know your fixes worked when you hear that beautiful 2001 MIDI keyboard theme. These tones are so nostalgic. And once we've been properly serenaded, we start a new game. And we get a cutscene of the NYPD responding to an incident at Aesir Plaza. And we fly up to the top of the building to meet our titular protagonist, Max Payne. And just look at that mug. And he opens with the line, "They were all dead." Starting off the game at the end, a trend that would continue with each game in the series, which all open later on in the story before cutting back to the beginning. We then cut to a comic strip styled slideshow to introduce us to the world and the characters. And these comic strips are the main form of storytelling in the game, as actual in-game cutscenes and animatics are pretty limited. Max's face and likeness in the comic panels are portrayed by Remedy's writer and later creative director Sami Jarvi, aka Sam Lake. This fellow right here. The dude's got a pretty striking face and head shape, so it makes sense that he was picked to represent Max. And this smug, smirking face stretched over Max's blocky polygonal head ended up being an iconic work of 3D art going forward, even though his only two expressions are smirking smugly or a pained grimace from getting shot to death. And he also stands in for Max in the comics, as the comic panels are just photos of Sam and other actors with filters and foggy shading, added to give the comics a dark and hazy feel. And even all the way back here in 2001, Remedy had already begun solidifying their unique mixed media presentation in their games, as their later games like Control and Alan Wake 2 use live-action cutscenes interspersed between gameplay segments to tell their stories. And this is the foundation of that later work here. It isn't 100% perfect, however, as for some panels, you can just tell it's Sam Lake in front of a green screen mewing for the camera, or it's one of the actors they got trying to do their best troll face impression. And it can get pretty funny, and the comic book medium itself makes dialogue, extra exposition, and character development pretty limited. But I think they did an overall good job at effectively using these comic panels to tell the game's story. And combined with James McCaffrey's dour and silky voice narrating the text like a classic neo-noir detective black and white film, gives this game a unique and surprisingly dark and immersive atmosphere that ultimately gets the job done pretty well. In these comics, we're introduced to NYPD detective Max Payne, shooting the shit with his DEA buddy Alex Balder, Max flexing his wedding ring, telling Alex that he's got his wife and newborn daughter to attend to now, and he's even given up smoking to keep his baby from huffing in that secondhand smoke. Max then returns to his picturesque New Jersey suburb home, only to walk into a living nightmare. His house is trashed, his wife is nowhere to be found, and the phone is ringing. We can pick up the phone by walking up to it and pressing E, the all-purpose interact button, and the game will flash a little exclamation point pop-up to show that you're near an important interactable object. But more interestingly, Max will also verbally call out things to examine, like mentioning documents on a table or other clues he spots, which you interact with to get extra story panels.
The bank robber's score lay on the table. The bank robbers have been after Acer Corporation bonds.
Interacting with stuff can also let you open up cabinets and containers for extra ammo and meds. And of course, pushing buttons to make things happen. Classic video game shit. On the phone, Max pleads with a mysterious female caller that someone has broken into his house and tells him to call the police, to which she replies, "Good," and hangs up. What the hell? Max is ops with people he doesn't even know exist. We continue on through the house, following after the commotion, baby screams, and gunshots until we run into some sort of escaped mental patient with a gun, who is mumbling some insane nonsense to himself, and we shoot his jaw off for being inside our house. And inside the room we find the body of Max's daughter. Damn, this 2001 dead baby art must have been insanely shocking back in the day. And it's a pretty ballsy move for the devs to murder your baby child in the first 5 minutes of gameplay. We then find another thug in the bedroom, and we add a few extra orifices to his body, and he goes flying from the bullet impact. And just take note of this animation, as you'll know an enemy is dead when they do this backwards death jump or fall to the ground in some sort of animation. If they're just injured by a bullet, they'll do a Payne jiggle and stop firing for a second. And later on in the game, when enemies can take more than a few bullets to the chest, you'll have enemies hitting the wobble from the bullet impacts. And it's pretty funny. But even though the thugs are now dead, we're too late, and we find Michelle dead on the bed, with Max hitting a great Vader-esque "No!" over her dead body. We then cut to 3 years later, and we learn that these strapped up mental patients were actually gas station tweakers high off a mysterious designer drug called Valkyr, or V for short. A green injectable goop drug that seemingly makes you turn into a violent maniac that can resist almost all forms of pain. And in the time since his family's slaying, Max had transferred to the DEA and had begun looking for the source of the Valkyr. He learned that Valkyr was being trafficked by Jack Lupino, an underboss in the Punchinello crime family. So Max has gone undercover within the family to get closer to the source. The first level of the game starts when Max gets a call from one of his DEA contacts, some chuckle fuck named BB, who tells him to meet with his old buddy Alex in the Roscoe Street subway station, as it seems something has come up with Jack Lupino. All the while, a massive snowstorm rages over New York City. We then cut to a cutscene of Max arriving at the subway station, but Alex is nowhere to be found. Something isn't right here. We investigate the station and find a dead police officer, so some wacky shit is definitely going down. Max then pulls out his trusty Beretta, and soon enough, we run into some armed thugs, and we start blasting. Max Payne, as you probably know, is a third-person shooter in almost its purest form. You use WASD to move, E to interact when needed, and left-click to shoot, and the shooting reticle is just this small white dot, which is perfect for PC aiming, and it gives you maximum visibility on your ops. The UI is also kept to a minimum, only showing the bare necessities. In the bottom right is the name of your currently equipped item and the amount of ammo you have. Your weapon menu opens when you cycle through your weapons, and in the bottom left corner is the game's unique health system. Your health is denoted by this gray silhouette of Max, which fills up red as you take damage, and red means dead. So always keep an eye on your shadow here, and it'll only regenerate naturally down to his shoulders if the red damage goes above his head, which is about 1 or 2 hits away from death, so we need some consumables to de-red ourselves. Now, unlike other games, Max doesn't heal with medkits or bandages, nor does he stand still and let his body heal and seal back up like Wolverine-powered Call of Duty characters. Instead, Max pops some painkiller pills, waits a few seconds, and he's back in the fight, guns blazing. And this makes Max probably one of the most hardcore gaming protagonists of all time, as he doesn't get to apply any bandages, sew up any holes, do some natural speed healing, or drink any magical potions. Nah, he's just gotta make do like your arthritis-stricken grandpa, pop a hydrocodone and just thug that shit out. And that's fucking tough, and I respect that. And just imagine Max running through these levels, blitzed out of his mind on painkillers, his pupils fully dilated until they're completely black, blood pouring from his bullet entry and exit wounds. But he just keeps shooting and diving like he's doing some deadly goalie practice. And it must be terrifying to see this guy coming as some lowly mob goon. Zoomer Max Payne will be popping perks. These painkillers will restore around 1/4 of your health per pop, and it takes a few seconds for the red to burn down all the way. so taking them in a firefight is not a good idea unless you're in good cover, and you find them pill bottles all over the levels in containers or in the gorgeous medicine cabinets, which you'll always be happy to see. And you can hold up to 8 pill bottles at once, and you'll need all these pills too, as Max Payne isn't lying about the Max Payne part, and even on the lowest difficulty Fugitive, the game is still pretty damn hard, and it reminds me of similar old school games like Half-Life 1, which is full of deadly accurate enemies and insta-kill death traps that are expertly designed to murder you with maximum efficiency. The start of the game isn't too bad, but you'll soon start running into enemies that can melt your health with highly accurate shotguns, Desert Eagles, and rifles, and any enemy encounter can easily be a deadly one. Also, most of your early and mid-game weapons are pretty inaccurate from any distance beyond a few meters, and all bullets are physical projectiles with predictable travel times, so you have to take distance, travel time, spread, and shot angle all into account, and some gunfights might just not end up working out for you for one reason or another, and you'll get gunned down as your Beretta bullets completely miss the enemy you've zeroed the center dot on, and it can get pretty punishing, and death will be very common. But luckily, we're not completely hopeless, and Max is a bit of a bullet mancer, and he knows an ancient Hong Kong gun fu technique. You may have heard of it. It's called bullet time, which is a pretty interesting product of its time. You gotta understand, it's 2001. The Matrix was only 2 years old at this point, and shooting in slow motion was all the rage back then. And by pressing shift/right click while not moving, and if you're moving, you'll launch into a shoot dodge instead of starting bullet time, so be careful when activating one or the other. Max can slow down time to get an advantage on his enemies, allowing him to see and evade bullets and to mow down the now slowed enemies. Bullet time is denoted by the hourglass icon next to the health shadow, and it burns down as you use it, and it refills as you kill enemies, getting extra bullet juice for headshots. So bullet time is all about managing your bullet juice and using it at the most opportune times, and it actively rewards aggressive and skilled gunplay, keeping the game's moment-to-moment pace fast and brutal. There's no taking cover here, bitch. This shit's for pussies. Although, I didn't end up using bullet time as much as I thought I would, as it felt pretty lethargic and not all that helpful. Max's movements are slowed alongside everything else, so actually being able to get out of the way of bullets was still pretty difficult, and having to deliberately take your fingers off all the movement keys and then activating bullet time felt pretty clunky and unintuitive. It's great for when you need to land several consecutive headshots, but playing the game at normal speed can be just as effective to dodge bullets, as long as you stay on the move. And instead, I use the other skill Max has much more often, that being the shoot dodge, where if you press shift/right mouse button while moving, Max will dive and slow down time as he dives, allowing you to pull off some sick and stylish diving kills, as well as it being a dodge dive that you can use to get between covers. However, you have to be careful when shoot dodging, as Max will be completely exposed for a short time after dodging as he gets back up, and you can't move or shoot while getting back up, and a poorly timed shoot dodge into an open area will have you feeling like Mikey from The Sopranos. But Max can do that move where he can throw himself onto his feet from lying on his back. Pretty impressive. Max is sneaky athletic. Goddamn. Max can also do a roll dodge, where he launches into a Dark Souls-like roll after pressing space while moving side to side or back, causing enemies to miss their shots, as apparently, you're invincible as you roll. But I barely used this roll dodge over just using the shoot dodge, as I found it felt a bit awkward and disjointed to use, and it doesn't go very far, and enemies can just wait and light you up once you stop rolling anyway, and I just use shoot dodge if I need to get behind a wall or cover, and that way I could actually fire back while moving instead of just rolling out of the way. And shoot dodging was just way more fun to use. But shoot dodging is definitely the least viable in this game out of the entire series. Max doesn't get much air, you're a total sitting duck after landing, enemies can still track and lead their shots into you while shoot dodging, and you have to take the bullet spread and travel time into account in order to land your shots. And I was missing way more than I was hitting, but god damn it, I'm dive styling on these mob goons even if it kills me. And it usually does. But it's still super fun to perfectly land a diving headshot, and it makes all those diving deaths worth it for me. But from here, Max Payne is pure gameplay, and you'll get more weapons later like the Commando AR and the Jackhammer Auto Shotgun and so on that are stronger and more accurate, which makes battles much more consistent, as the Commando bullets go more or less right where you're aiming, and you also have melee weapons. But I found these melee weapons to be about as helpful as Counter-Strike knives, so I only used a melee weapon in one specific instance, as 99% of all the enemies in this game will mow you down way before you can reach them to give them a nice clonk on the head. And Max holds all these weapons at once in his huge swishing trench coat, and each weapon has its own best use cases. Double fist the Beretta and Ingram for close groups of enemies, use the Desert Eagle and Commando for mid-range to faraway enemies that you need to accurately hit, use shotguns for crowd control and annihilating isolated enemies, and so on. And there are also grenades you can throw, but I barely use those, much like the melee weapons. But the grenade throwing enemies can go get bricked. They throw these things extremely fast. They're pretty hard to see, and they deal massive damage unless you're well clear of them. But sometimes, you don't have enough time to move out of the way, and you'll end up taking damage from the wildly disjointed explosion to actual hitbox ratio. But they're nothing game-breaking or ruining, just frustrating at worst, and it may cost you a pill bottle or two, or you'll be mashing that R button in some spots. But these bullet powers and one-man arsenal skills are nothing compared to Max's strongest ability, the ability to quick save and quick load. Like I mentioned earlier, Max Payne has what I would call old-school design difficulty, which is focused on extremely quick deaths and an emphasis on immaculate execution of gunfights to succeed. And as a result, getting shot to death is very common, and I can guarantee you will die several dozens of times, sometimes dying multiple times in the same fight or trap. But like how Jesus was sent by God to Earth to save humanity, the F5 button has been sent by Remedy to save your computer monitor from your fist, and you are free to save and load anytime, anywhere, which really saves this game from becoming the Sisyphus rock-pushing simulator. You are in full control of how difficult you want your Max Payne experience to be. Save after every kill, save only after grabbing painkillers, or don't save at all. It's all up to you, and it makes the overall experience so much smoother and tailored to each player. However, this ability is very powerful, and you can accidentally end up making things worse for yourself, like saving right before you get killed, trapping you in a gold experience Requiem-like endless death loop. So be careful, and really be sure you're good to go before you reflexively smash that F5 button, as you can easily lock yourself into a suboptimal position where you have no health, no painkillers, and 6 Italian thugs with precise bot aim staring you down. Anyway, we continue through the subway station, blasting the thugs we come across and ramming a subway train through a barrier to proceed to the next level. And we find out why there are so many heavily armed goons around here. They were using the subway system to break into an underground vault belonging to the Aesir Corporation, trying to steal their bonds and bars of gold under orders from Jack Lupino. So we slaughter every thug walking and grab a detonator and use it to blow up a fortified door, where we finally run into our buddy Alex. Max gives Alex a rundown on what's happened and why there's now 40 new dead mobsters in this subway station. But as we're talking, a mysterious man shows up and domes Alex with a Desert Eagle from around a corner before fleeing. And with our last friend and the police dead, and Max likely to be framed for this killing of Alex and the robbery, we escape the subway and kill more goons as we progress. And once we're topside, Max decides to head to a rundown hotel/brothel, a known headquarters of Lupino's, and meets with Lupino's twin thugs, the Finito brothers. Max asks the Finito brothers where he can find Jack Lupino, but the brothers are now aware that Max is an undercover cop. So instead of answering his question, they whip out their pistols to take Max out. Bad move. And with the Finito brothers sent screaming to hell, we can examine a letter on their desk for some more information. We learn about Lupino's weaselly right-hand man, Vinny Gognitti, who was ordered to oversee a Valkyr deal at the hotel. And Lupino had also sent an enforcer, a guy named Rico Muerte, to make sure the deal went smoothly. So we fight through the hotel and investigate Rico's room. And this hotel has a pretty great and disgusting atmosphere. It's full of vibrating sex beds and porn posters all over the decrepit walls, even having a hidden porno camera detail. It really adds to this game's dark and nasty mood, and the graphics here are still holding up pretty well in my opinion. And after dodging the shotgun door trap, we find a note from Don Punchinello to Muerte, which reveals the Don's direct connection to the Valkyr trade. We continue on blasting our way through the hotel until we reach the hotel bar, where we find Rico Muerte getting some sloppy top from one of the prostitutes. And we barge in and start shooting, and even the prostitute pulls out a gun and starts shooting back at us. Muerte is sort of a boss enemy, who has more health than your average enemy, and can also deal more damage, I believe. And these boss-type enemies appear several times throughout the game at certain story moments, and I found the best strategy was to off the weaker enemies in the room before killing the boss last, as guys like Muerte can take several rounds of buckshot to the chest without going down, and focusing on the boss leaves you open for his minions to Swiss your cheese. So killing all of them and then making the boss do the wobble for you seemed to be the best way to fight them. And this Rico Muerte fight is pretty hilarious too. He's still got his pants pulled down from the knob polishing he was getting, and I thought that was such a great little detail. And once we blast Muerte and his hooker, we continue on and find an old phone switchboard, and we can listen in on the mob chatter. We hear Gognitti frantically calling his boss, saying that Max Payne had shot up the hotel and killed a small village worth of Punchinello men. And we then leave the hotel and continue pursuing Gognitti. While we're outside, we see a car bomb go off in front of the hotel and spot Russian mobster Vladimir Lem driving away from the scene, who has kicked off a gang war between him and the Punchinello family, blowing up their buildings with bombs and even causing a damn oil tanker to crash into the side of a building. But bombs are no bombs. We need info on Lupino's location, so we head inside another mob-controlled building, which is full of Valkyr tweakers who scream like they got their dicks chomped off by an alligator if you shoot them. It's pretty funny. As we progress, we come across a mysterious ringing payphone, and after picking up, the caller tells us his name is Alfred Woden, and he knows where Max is and what he's doing, and he says that the police are coming for him, and he says that he will contact us again before hanging up. And right on cue, the cops show up demanding that Max surrender. But fuck that. We got more Italians to kill, and we continue through the building towards Lupino's office. We jump through some windows and walk along some hanging pipes to reach Lupino's office. We open his door the old-fashioned way, and once inside, we find Gognitti, who starts yelling at Max in his ridiculous Italian mobster accent.
Payne, freaking fat! I knew from day one there was something screwy about you.
And he opens fire on us, but we use our ancient Hong Kong gung fu techniques to dodge the bullet and cap Gognitti right in the chest, who then flees and sicks his goons on us. And once we dispatch the goons, we can pick up a letter on Gognitti's desk, where Gognitti reveals that Jack Lupino has gone completely insane, mentally apeshit, who enjoys killing people for the simple fun of it, and Vinny was pants-pissingly scared of it. We then have to chase Vinny through the city, through buildings and over rooftops, and even jumping on the top of a moving subway train. And although the character models kind of look like action figures, the chase is actually pretty cinematic and fun to watch for a 2001 game. Gognitti jumped 2 stories onto a moving subway car with a hole in his gut, so I gotta respect that grittiness. And Max does the same, and we jump onto another passing train to keep pursuing him. And we keep chasing Gognitti across rooftops, going through several difficult firefights, until we corner him, and put even more bullets into his ass, and we then politely ask him for Lupino's location. And amazed by our classiness, Gognitti reveals that Lupino is at his club, Ragnarok, which is located in an old theater, so we head on over and leave Gognitti to bleed out from his 15 or so odd bullet wounds in the snow. Ragnarok is probably one of the coolest levels in the entire game, and it's definitely the freakiest. It feels lifted right out of Alan Wake 2. Lupino has gotten deep into demonic and cultic shit, collecting books about Ragnarok, the Necronomicon, and other classic demonic books. And as you progress further into the level, you run into freaky-ass ritual rooms full of pentagrams, dead bodies, and it's made even more unsettling by the great and ominous music. Lupino must be really geeking hard off his own supply of V, and has been trying to summon any demon or eldritch monster he could think of. Wait, you're who now? And also, this dude has got a thing about wolves. We then soon reach Lupino's dark chamber, and have to survive an onslaught of ceiling goons in the toughest gun battle in the game yet. And once they're killed, Lupino reveals himself from behind the massive curtain in the room, and he starts waffling about some insanity about eating angel and demon meat, before attacking with his 2 goons, letting out a huge OW! Get used to hearing that shit too. Lupino is a real motherfucker, and one of the hardest encounters in the entire game for me. He uses a powerful sawed-off shotgun, and he has X-ray vision through the red wall drapes, so don't hide behind them under any circumstances. You're just gonna get whacked. And he can also throw Molotov cocktails that will insta-kill you if they land properly, which come out really fast and can be really tough to avoid. Like I mentioned earlier, the grenades in this game are a bit too juiced up in my opinion. Lupino was cooking my ass, so I had to listen to the satanic furry belt out his awoo like 15 times. And that Valkyrie's got him eating bullets like Godzilla. This dude can take an insane amount of lead, making this fight very brutal. But just stay on the move to avoid the cocktails, kill Thing 1 and Thing 2 here, and then focus down Lupino with a constant stream of bullets while staying constantly moving, and soon enough, and about 100 or so bullets later, Lupino will be toast. Max then mag dumps into Lupino to make sure he's dead. Even Max knew that fight was a total bitch. But while we're doing that, an armed woman walks in, and her and Max do some Jersey-style flirting, and she reveals herself as Mona Sachs, the twin sister of Don Punchinello's wife, Lisa. And she also tells Max that the Don himself had been the one to set up Alex's death and the framing of Max, and that she herself is after Punchinello, taking a contract to kill him. And the whole time they were talking, they've had their guns jammed in each other's faces. Mona suggests that Max and her team up, and Max folds instantly. I mean, it's probably been 3 years since he's had a foot job. Imagine what that does to a man. So they pour up some whiskey to celebrate their new alliance, but then Max gets overtaken by the Green Goblin Vortex. Mona had spiked his whiskey with Valkyr, which launches Max into a vivid drug nightmare where he's back in his house on the day his family was killed, and he has to run through a maze of hallways with this cool zoom-out effect that makes this section really feel like a bad dream. You're stuck in a maze, running in slow motion, unable to reach the people you want to protect. It works great in capturing the feeling of a nightmare. After getting through the maze, we then proceed to the baby's room, which is now a dark void full of thin bloodlines that we have to platform on, which looks really cool and feels really trippy and creepy. but it's unfortunately pretty annoying to traverse. Max's movements aren't tuned at all for careful platforming and jumping like this, and it's very easy to take a wrong step and slip off the blood to your death, and you have to start over, and falling to your death repeatedly really takes away from the tone and tension of this section. So F5 at will here. But once we're through the dream, we wake up bound to a chair, with Frankie the Bat lording over us, who does what his name suggests. But before he has the chance to invert our skull for good, he suddenly stops and says that he needs to go take a piss and go get a beer or something, and then he'll come beat us to death later. What is this, amateur hour? This is like Thug 101. Don't leave your hostage alive to kill later. So Max breaks out of his chair, of course, but we're unarmed, so we're forced to use a baseball bat melee weapon to kill a goon and grab his gun. And this was the only time I used a melee weapon in the entire game, when it was 100% mandatory. So it makes a lot of sense that melee weapons were mostly cut going forward, because even here it's extremely hard to use effectively. And my best strategy was to clonk these two guys, quickly grab their guns, and then perfectly execute the remaining goons with my scavenge weapons, which took a few tries, but we made it eventually. There's more goons than you think. They just keep popping out of corners and doorways like roaches. But once we're strapped back up with the guns we've looted from the bodies of 25 dead Italians, we head back to the hotel we shot up earlier, which is now full of police tape and body outlines from our hard work. We then overhear a thug talking on the phone, saying that Mona had been captured after trying to kill Don Punchinello. Maybe she could have used Max's help instead of just roofing him. But whatever. We proceed in and make it back to the bar that we killed Rico Muerte in earlier, and we find the Bat standing awkwardly in the corner, and it kicks off a harder version of the Muerte fight. The Bat's got more goons, and his guns hit even harder than Muerte's, and I was forced to play very defensively, peeking around the door to pump the Bat full of buckshot until he goes down. The melee weapons here are so bad, even a guy called the Bat uses guns when it's time to fight for real. But with him dead, we're done here, and we read a baseball bad boy comic strip to cap off the Bat's life. And I'm not really sure what the joke is supposed to be here. Bicycle Helmet Girl's mouth is so huge, it makes her head look like a giant eyeball. We then cut to Max driving away from the scene. Where the fuck did he get this car though? I guess he just took the keys of a mobster he smoked and just stole a car. But anyway, he's being tailed by a black car, who cuts him off, and then out steps Vlad Lem, the Russian mobster who's been going all IRA on the Punchinellos. Lem has the most charisma in the entire game, and it's a nice shakeup from Max's poetic doomerism.
Bang. You're dead, Max Payne.
I might have laughed if I remembered how.
Lem tells Max that he has a deal for him. One of Vlad's men, a guy named Boris Dime, who was in charge of a cargo ship full of Vlad's weapons, had flipped to Punchinello's side. And if Punchinello gets control of all those weapons, Vlad will lose his gang war, and Max will have to deal with even more heavily strapped thugs from then on. So we head to the shipyard to cap Boris. The shipyard has a lot of long angles and faraway enemies, and it's a shakeup from the mostly close quarters blasting we've been doing in sleazy hotels and rundown tenements. And you'll really feel the weapon inaccuracy here. I almost burned 2 mags trying to shoot this guy in this container mover, so make sure your aim is true and your saves wise. We then get to ride on a large container mover where you press directional buttons to move around the tracks, and we're given a sniper rifle to snipe the faraway enemies, which is so much smoother to use than trying to use a Desert Eagle or a Beretta at a distance. And it has this dated, but pretty cool bullet kill cam whenever you hit an enemy. Once we're done on our container mover ride, we make it to the Charon, Boris's cargo ship, and assault it through some more tough gunfights. And on the ship, we pick up a call from Don Punchinello on the boat's receiver, and Max trolls him a bit to try to piss him off, hoping that making Don Punchinello ass mad will cause him to make a mistake. It's a solid tactic. We then head down into the bowels of the ship, and we find Boris shacked up in the central pump room with a bunch of goons, kicking off another pretty tough encounter. Boris put his pump shotgun in the damn pack-a-punch machine, and that damn thing can one-shot you from pretty much anywhere in the boat. Here he one-shotted 70% of my health from across the room. Ouch. And I was only able to beat him by baiting him into the hallway, and then mag dumped the Ingram into his ass to stun lock him in a wobble. And I sprayed about 2 mags into his ass before he went down, as entering the central room was just pretty much suicide. But regardless, with Boris flatlined, we can return to Vlad, who makes us his friend, gives us a big old sack of guns, and sends us on our way. But even with this big gun sack, Max isn't confident in attacking Angelo Punchinello's manor head on. But I mean, I think we could do it. Just give me 4 bottles of hydro and a few quick saves, and this whole Punchinello nonsense will be history. But I get the apprehension. So Max tries to set up a meeting with the Don, calling him up on a payphone. Punchinello tells Max to meet him at his restaurant, which totally isn't a trap. Trust me, bro. Don's honor. Hand over my heart. And we head on over to meet him. But unsurprisingly, the restaurant starts exploding mere seconds after we enter, Punchinello torching his entire restaurant just to kill one guy. But an exploding building is no match for Max. This restaurant level has some pretty great spectacle. There are tons of huge, screen-shaking explosions and custom animations like these shelves getting knocked over like dominoes that really sell you that this place is getting blown to high heaven. But the actual gameplay is just trial and error running, where you'll get insta-killed by fiery death traps, reload, and try to avoid the trap on your next run. And repeat about 4 or 5 times until you make it all the way through. And it really seems like the devs were challenging themselves to see how many times they could get you killed. Like, just look at this flying gas tank trap. It's unreal what they're doing to me, man. But anyway, once we're through the restaurant death trap, we proceed into a mobster-infested sewer to escape the blaze, and we make it back topside, where Vlad pulls up and picks us up, and Vlad drives us over to the Punchinello Manor, which we probably should have done in the first place. Vlad and Max have a nice tender moment, and he drops us off, and when we enter, we find some dead bodies left behind by Mona's attack, and our goal is to take out a trio of Punchinello's strongest shooters, who we've heard about throughout the game as some real scary bastards, but I don't think they speak or have any comic panels, so they ain't nothing to me, man. So we proceed through the detailed and still great looking mansion, and cap the shooter trio in some pretty challenging gunfights, but none of the trio could even come close to this dude with a grenade launcher standing behind this cracked door. The explosion he makes to blow up the door can damage you from another continent, so give the door plenty of room to blow. And once past the goon guards, we find Lisa Punchinello dead on her bed, brutalized by an unknown attacker, likely her husband, the Don, who Mona says beats on her like an Alabama housewife. So we move to find him and to punish him for this gross disrespect for women. But before we find him, we get another mysterious call from that Woden character on a nearby phone, who tells us that an attack helicopter just landed on the manor grounds with a gang squad of armed goons, so we gotta hurry up. And a few more gunfights later, we break down Punchinello's door and find him alone in his office. Punchinello immediately folds at the sight of Max's girth and guns, and he says that he was just following orders from a powerful woman. But just then, unidentified killer suits storm in and gun down Punchinello, and we take them down in return for this ridiculous kill stealing. We then leave Punchinello's office and walk right into an ambush. An Uzi-toting woman then approaches us and injects Max with some Valkyr, hoping that he'll geek out of his mind and overdose, instead of just, I don't know, opening fire with the 15 guns she's got staring right into our soul. It's an interesting strategy, but before we enter the geek zone, we hear the woman say, "Take me to Cold Steel," before the Green Goblin portal reappears to throw Max into another nightmare section, and Max gets so faded, he even smashes the 4th wall and realizes that he's living in a computer game, being forced to gun down mob goons over and over again. Damn, does he know for real? It's another cool and mind-bending sequence for sure, but man are these platforming sections just not it, and the new slow motion added to the blood shell platforming took me a bit to get adjusted to, and I hope you love plummeting to your death and sliding off edges. But once past this floaty Mario Payne section, we kill an evil clone of ourselves, and we finally wake up from our Valkyr nightmare. Max then heads to the last location the woman mentioned, Cold Steel Foundry, and we soon find an elevator that leads Max to a hidden lab facility, which was being used for something called Project Valhalla, but the thugs here have activated the self-destruct sequence, so we need to find any info we can fast. And after escorting this doctor and killing some straggler goons, we can learn a lot of new information from an open PC. We learn that Project Valhalla was a US Army research program into a drug that would enhance the stamina and morale of soldiers, essentially a super soldier serum. Classic villainous plot shit. The project ran for 4 years, but was ultimately cancelled due to lack of results, and instead of super soldiers, they just got super schizos with bullet resistance powers. However, it seems that weirdo lady that drugged us at the manor kept the project going, and we also learned that at some point, info about the project had gotten leaked. So some Valkyr test subjects have been sent to eliminate the person who saw the data leak, and the date and location line up perfectly with the slaying of Max's family. And it all makes sense now, because in one of the Valkyr Geek sessions, we learned that Max's wife had gotten a hold of info on Project Valhalla as part of her work at the DA's office, and the tweakers who broke into our house weren't random. They were sent by that Valkyr lady to cover their tracks and to silence Michelle for good. And all this pain, suffering, death, and destruction in Max's life was caused by essentially a fluke. It seems we went from a clerical error to 10,000 dead Italians. We then escape the lab as it self-destructs, and don't stand on the elevator grate as you're going up. It's Remedy trying to troll you again. But we make it out, and the whole facility goes up in flames, and with it, any leads we may have had. Max then heads to a diner to refuel on black coffee and stale donuts. And he then gets a call from his DEA contact BB, who tells him to meet him at the Choir Communications parking garage. But again, it's a trap to try and off Max. We talk to BB, which we learn is short for backstab and bastard, as he's been taking bribes from the Valkyr lady, and he was the one to kill Alex down in the subway. But as we're talking, a car barges in and picks up BB, and we have to fight our way down through the subway to chase it. And it's a tough as shit level. You have minimal cover, there's long angles, and enemies aggressively spawn in from around corners and from behind cars. And the enemies are more deadly and accurate than ever. And this will take some trial and error. F5 button looking real bangable right now. But once we catch up with BB, his chauffeur must have been drunk driving the whip or something, and he crashes out hard at the bottom floor of the garage. BB is strapped with an automatic jackhammer shotgun and will lob grenades at you from a distance, making him again incredibly deadly. These explosions are still brutally strong. But BB is no match for some bullet time, combined with around 25 Colt Commando bullets to his adamantium head. But with BB down, we get another call from Woden, who tells us to come to him at the Asgard building for a meeting. When we get there, he leads us through the historical building and introduces us to the Inner Circle, a sort of shadow government of noir York City, compromising of politicians, businessmen, and powerful mob bosses. And they have intimate knowledge on Project Valhalla, and they reveal the identity of that freak-ass Valkyr lady. Her name is Nicole Horn, and she is the president of Aesir Corporation, and is the one who had kept the Valkyr project going after its official cancellation. Horn had broken away from the Inner Circle, though, and Woden wants Max to off Horn in exchange for making all the potential legal trouble from his recent mass murder spree and his framing of the killing of Alex go away. But as we're getting this exposition dump, killer suits charge in, again, and shoot up the meeting room, and Max dives out of a window to escape, leaving the Inner Circle members to get lit up like a Christmas tree. We fight off these Aesir mercs, and in a surveillance center, Max sees Woden get back up, somehow having survived the surprise mass shooting, which seems very fortunate. But we learn later on that Woden had set up the shooting as a way of cleaning house, and is using Max to take out his biggest OPP, Horn. We then fight our way out of the pretty huge and vertical building, having to shoot out thugs below and above us to escape. And once out, there's only one thing we can do: shoot Nicole Horn in the face and get our vengeance. So we head on over to Aesir Plaza and just walk right through the front door and start blasting, cyberpunk style. Fueled by nothing but thirst for revenge and gamer rage. We gotta climb to the top of the building while fighting off Aesir's elite guards, and dodging some laser traps with some Mario jumps. And these guys are killers, and thank God for the Colt Commando, otherwise I'd be finished. And fuck this one thug in particular who ambushes you in the laser hallway. This dude has god tier accuracy. But whatever. We then reach an elevator, and out walks Mona Sachs, revealing that she's working for Horn, and was recently ordered to kill Max. But luckily, Mona thinks Max is a classy guy, and decides not to shoot him. But they still love to jam their weapons in each other's faces. Very romantic. But as they're talking, they're ambushed, and Mona gets clipped in the head, and seemingly dies from the wound, slumping to the ground in the elevator. We then fight off the attacking suits, and when they're dead, we recall the elevator and find it empty, Mona's body having seemingly vanished. We then take the elevator up, and we have to shoot the mines in the shaft to reach the top, which I thought was a cool little aim minigame of sorts. And at the top, we shoot through more goons, dodge a helicopter who ambushes us on the elevator, and we eventually catch up to Horn. And we chase after her on foot, taking out her tough-ass goons and shooting at a helicopter boss to get it to fuck off, even having to walk outside of the building to proceed, which was another super cool moment. And we eventually catch Horn on the roof trying to board that bitch-ass helicopter that's been harassing us for the entire level, which is the last segment of the game. And we see that the spire at the top of the roof is breaking apart due to the high winds and storm conditions, and we can see the support wires breaking off of the tower. And following this cutscene's clues, we realize that we have to shoot the two remaining wires, and you can shoot the second wire by climbing out on the first wire's outcrop, or by shooting through a barred door. And once the two wires have been shot, and the remaining goons have had a few extra orifices added, you then have to shoot the spire itself to give it the final push it needs, which wasn't very clear, and I thought the game had bugged out when I destroyed the last wire. But no, you gotta shoot that thing a few times to get it to fall. And when you do, the spire breaks, and like Thor's hammer, slams that chopper in Horn, crushing them and sending them falling to their deaths. Absolutely brutal, but incredibly deserved. Rest in piss, Valkyr bitch. But with that, Max walks out to where the game opens, and repeats the opening lines of the game, before surrendering to the police. And as he does, the snowstorm that had been raging the entire game finally ends, and Max's own personal Ragnarok comes to an end. Max is arrested, but he spots Woden in the crowd watching him getting detained, hoping that Woden will stick to his word. And the game ends with Max sitting in the back of a police car, smirking like his in-game face texture. But with that, that's Max Payne 1 complete. And overall, Max Payne is a dated, yet still pretty great third-person shooter that, outside of its technical issues of getting it to work on modern systems, still holds up incredibly well in the gameplay, presentation, and story aspects. Gunplay is tight, exciting, and pretty damn brutal. And while it can sometimes definitely go into the realm of frustrating bullshit, when boss enemies are nuking your health bar with a pack-a-punch shotgun and impossible to see and react to grenades, the ability to save whenever you want really mitigates this frustration by letting you set yourself up to retry gunfights over and over again extremely quickly, saving lots of potential lost time repeating the same fights and retreading the same areas. Although later games in the series tighten up the gunplay to make it more accurate and ultimately more enjoyable, the mechanics here are still rock solid, and additions like bullet time and shoot dodging give the game a unique dynamic feel. It's a really great style that would become iconic in the gaming industry. The graphics are dated, as to be expected from a 2001 game. The humans look like mannequins with human head skin stretched and grafted onto them, but despite the blocky models and rudimentary textures, Max Payne's overall graphical presentation is executed extremely well. The rundown buildings, dark and snowy outdoor areas, lavish mansions, and dank and dreary industrial areas really bolster the game's dark noir vibe amazingly well. And even these blocky-ass 2001 graphics instill a wholly engrossing mood of danger, darkness, and death. And each level is meticulously detailed with furniture, wall decorations, and other clutter to really make each area feel used and real. And Remedy are pros at filling levels with awesome details like this. And finally, the story. Although it's fairly fast and loose, a bit underdeveloped, and pretty short on meaningful character development, it's still overall really effective and interesting. And you do feel a strong sense of connection with Max and his never-ending dogshit bullet hell life, and helping him get revenge for his family's slaying was still pretty compelling, which is helped greatly by James McCaffrey's legendary voice work as Max. His poetic noir-style narration and the graphic novel-styled story panels give the story a unique vibe and presentation. And although it isn't perfect, and some of the panels are pretty silly, I mean, you can just tell some of the panels are just goofy pictures of Sam Lake making blue steel faces at the camera in the Remedy studios. And Max and Mona always pointing their guns in each other's faces was pretty goofy, and it felt more like a running joke than a tense encounter. The game will be presenting extremely dark topics like death, family murder, mass murder, and suicidal attempts at revenge. All the while, Sam Lake and the other actors are making troll faces in the comic panels. The game is full of extremely dark themes and topics, and hell, your baby daughter and wife get murdered in the first 5 minutes. But the game also doesn't take itself too seriously. In a few levels after crazed junkies murder your baby and wife, Max will be shooting at a fat Italian mobster with his pants pulled around his ankles because we interrupted him getting some dome. It's kind of amazing that despite the tonal whiplash, somehow, it never truly disrupts the overall experience. I found it still all came together well, and was successful in crafting a unique version of the New York City setting, where crime runs deep, the police are always one step behind the thugs, and shadowy elites vie for power in the background, and 40 Italians getting shot dead in a brothel hotel is just another Tuesday. And it really feels like a parallel universe version of New York City, or as Max calls it, Noir York City. And it's all wrapped in a cool Nordic/Ragnarok theming, where Max goes through his own personal apocalypse, his own personal Ragnarok, if you will, the Norse mythology's apocalypse. And most of the names are direct references: Valkyr Drug, Project Valhalla, the Ragnarok Club, Aesir Corporation, the Asgard Building, and an all-encompassing snowstorm that heralds the coming of Ragnarok. There's also heavy themes about the death of gods. Woden has one eye missing like Odin. Get it? Odin, Woden, yeah, you know, and so on. It's all pretty cool shit, and gives this game some sweet thematic harmony. But overall, Max Payne is just simply a fun, if challenging, third-person shooter that set the gold standard for all third-person shooters going forward. And with great and detailed levels, tough but fun gunplay, and a uniquely presented story that's just full of noir style and an extremely thick and immersive mood and atmosphere. And it all combines to make what I can only call a classic. But with that, we can move on to the sequel, Max Payne 2, The Fall of Max Payne. Coming out only 2 years later in 2003, Max Payne 2 picks up the story from the first game, retaining most of the original team on Max Payne 1. Sam Lake returns as the lead writer, and the game has gotten some solid technological upgrades since 2001. So let's not keep waffling, and fall right into the fall of Max Payne. Max Payne 2 starts much like the first, at the end. It's storming over a mansion, and Max opens with the classic line, "They were all dead." We then see the ghostly face of this unknown woman, and we then see Max kiss that woman, establishing the noir love story theme front and center right out of the gate. We then flash back to a hospital earlier in the night, where Max is absolutely cooked, suffering multiple gunshot wounds and significant head trauma. Brother looks like Brian Griffin after he got run over by a car. But despite these injuries, Max mentions that he had killed an unknown woman, which would make him a fugitive murderer again. So he forces himself out of his hospital bed and suits up in his classic leather trench coat. But sadly, he's not sporting that sweet orange undershirt anymore, and instead going for a rather girthy necktie. We then get into the game, and we zoom in through some amorphous green ore to catch up with Max Payne. Wait, who the fuck is that? That's not the smug Sam Lake face. Nope. For the sequel, Remedy decided to drop the Sam Lake face entirely and base Max's new face off of actor Timothy Gibbs, and his face is now fully modeled and is no longer just a texture wrapped around a few polygons. He can even open his mouth to speak. Wow. Welcome to the future. But I do miss that smirking Sam Lake face. The first game made it iconic to Max's character. Max then shakes off his grievous wounds, and we gain control of him to start the gameplay proper. And the game has gotten some pretty solid graphical upgrades. On top of the fully modeled faces, objects and clutter are now more detailed and less polygonal. Max's trench coat swishes more effortlessly than ever, and it's even got mirror reflections. Well, at least when the mirror actually reflects Max's head. Is Max part vampire or something? And as we proceed through the hospital, you'll also notice that you can push the clutter around, and that's thanks to this game's usage of the Havoc physics engine, which gives most clutter objects fairly realistic physics for you to push and shoot them around. And now enemies will ragdoll on death instead of just falling over through pre-baked death animations. And the Remedy devs use these physics for some pretty fun effects, like this moment where you shoot an enemy, and he goes flying out of the window, and he knocks over some scaffolding on the way down. And the enemy ragdolls can get chucked pretty far by some explosions and bullet knockback, and it works great to keep the innate silliness of Max Payne alive and well in these moments, as well as just making the game feel overall more dynamic and realistic. My only gripe with the updated animations and graphics would be that Max's run animation looks a bit awkward. He's running in this weirdly wide stance that makes it look like he's got to take a dump, or that he's got a gnarly stick up his ass or something. It's a little awkward. But overall, Max Payne 2 looks very solid, and is a noticeable step up from Max Payne 1 in pretty much all aspects. But back to the story. It's not much longer until Max starts tweaking out again, hallucinating himself fucking on a woman. Damn, that head trauma got Max feeling freaky. And we soon find a dead guard, and we take his gun before a masked thug appears, who we have to take out, sending his ragdoll into the wall with a bullet punch. It seems we have some armed thugs actively hunting us through the hospital, on top of the police wanting to arrest Max for murder. Great. So we then take the elevator down, and at the bottom, we run into NYPD Commissioner Jim Bravura, who was in the first game as a background character trying to chase after Max Payne, but was always one step behind him. And as Bravura is accosting us for killing someone important, probably that woman, he gets mowed down in a hail of gunfire, and the thug shooting him also shoots a nearby gas canister that flies into the elevator we're in and blows us up. Whoa, nice Casa D'Angelo death trap reference. And the elevator crashes down into the morgue, with Max thankfully unharmed. And in the morgue, we see our victim, a lady named Winterson, dead. We then cut back to the night before, and get caught up with Max since the end of the first game. It looks like Woden stuck to his word, and got Max off the hook for his one-man massacre, the framing of Alex's death, and the assassination of Aesir CEO Nicole Horn. And after getting the Deep State to free him, Max leaves the DEA and returns to the NYPD to become a detective again. And we catch up with him responding to a shots-fired call at a warehouse that's owned by his mobster buddy Vlad Lem, the cheeky Russian mob boss from Max Payne 1. So we arrive at the warehouse and head inside, and we soon run into a semi-suspicious but pretty chill cleaner, and we force him to bring us upstairs where we observe some gunshots going off. But after he opens a door for us, he pulls out a pistol and attacks, and we expand his mouth size as punishment. These cleaners are actually some armed thugs in disguise, and we have to take them down. So we immediately start shooting, and Max has really improved his gun fu skills since the first game. First off, the weapons are now more accurate across the board. The weapons still have spread, but it seems much more reduced from the first game. Weapons also feel much more impactful than in the first game, and that's helped greatly by the new physics features that have enemies react more realistically to getting shot, rather than just hitting the wobble when Max shoots their nipples off with his dual Berettas. And the weapons feel pretty great to use overall, and it's a noticeable step up from the first game pretty much all across the board. And there's a few new guns for Max to use, like the AK-47, which is going by its popular alternative name, the Kalashnikov. You can now dual-wield Desert Eagles, too, which must be fucking murder on Max's wrists, and a scoped MP5 for some short-range precision shooting. And melee weapons have been pretty much wholly removed for a pistol whip weapon that I literally never used. But overall, the shooting here just feels great, and it's more satisfying than ever. But the absolute best changes come from the new bullet time and shoot dodging tweaks. In the first game, bullet time was a pretty situational skill for me, as I'd mostly use shoot dodge when I needed to slow down time to do some gun fu, as Max was still slow as fuck in bullet time, making him pretty vulnerable to still getting gunned down by the slow-moving bullets. Max's molasses ass just simply couldn't move out of the way fast enough. And I found that playing at normal speed and shooting enemies while being constantly on the move while popping shoot dodges every now and again was just as viable as popping that bullet time. But in Max Payne 2, Max is no longer burdened by his cement shoes during bullet time, and he now moves much faster, and he can even speed up by scoring kills while in bullet time. And bullet time is toggled when pressing right click only. You no longer need to stop moving, and then press right mouse button to turn on bullet time like you're trying to do a neutral air attack in Super Smash Bros. Thank God. Bullet time also recharges over time, on top of recharging on kill. And when you reload, Max hits this sick spin move that feels ripped right out of the Matrix. And all these new tweaks make bullet time much more viable in any situation, allowing you to use it more often than before, making Max a living bullet storm in his peak form. Max is also back with the shoot dodge, and it seems that Max has been getting his squats and box jumps in at the gym. And Max gets more air in his shoot dodges this time around, giving you higher angles to shoot from, and a bit of extra time to land your diving shots. It's functionally the same as the first game, just pick a direction and press shift to dive, and then pop some heads before you hit the ground. And like the new bullet time, it's fucking great, and it's so much fun to dive around blasting cleaners in slow motion. And it just feels like a genuine step up from the lower dive in the first game, just pretty much all across the board. It's just simply better. And I'm kind of barreling through these mechanics, but that's because the gameplay is pretty much the same. You still just move around, interact with stuff with F or E, pop some pills to heal about a quarter of your health, press F5 to quick save, and press space in a direction other than forward to do an extended and less clunky feeling somersault dive, which I also barely use in this game. And when I did, it was usually a misinput. And all these new upgrades and tweaks make the gunplay and overall difficulty much more forgiving than the first game. Higher accuracy, improved bullet time speed and regeneration, and longer and higher shoot dodges all combined to make Max much deadlier, resulting in you dying a lot less than in Max Payne 1. And it's definitely a change for the better. Now don't get me wrong, Max Payne 1 was still a lot of fun, but most boss fights and some gunfights could be downright rope fuel when a regular goon can knock off half your health bar from one bullet. And the bosses are spanking you with their skulls made of lead and their pack-a-punch shotguns that can one-tap you across the room. And these types of moments are pretty much gone in Max Payne 2, and those boss-type enemies have been pretty much removed as well, which I find a little bit disappointing, and I wish Remedy iterated on this boss-type enemy to make them more balanced and fun, rather than just axing them entirely. But this isn't to say that Max Payne 2 is easy though. It's still a difficult shooter that requires great aim, using bullet time to its full effects, and there's still plenty of opportunities to get your ass smoked. You'll still run into plenty of tough-ass gunfights and enemy encounters that you have to take a few tries at. But all these gameplay updates really mitigate the semi-frequent bullshit moments from the first game. It makes the difficulty much more consistent overall. Also, it seems the devs got their fill of trolling us with insta-kill death traps in the first game, as there's very few in this one, which I'm very thankful for. But simply put, Max Payne 2 is just the stronger version of Max Payne 1, and is mechanically everything a sequel should be. Well done. Anyway, back to the story. We clear out these suspiciously strapped cleaners from the warehouse, and we find them interrogating Vlad's gun manufacturer. Max tries to stop them, but they fire back and kill her, which brings Max's dead woman he failed to protect count up to 2 for now. And as we fight our way out, we cut to a scene at a nearby elevator, and out walks Mona Sachs, who somehow survived that bullet she took in the head from the last game, and is sporting a fresh red leather jacket, and also has a different face this time like Max. She and Max say hi to each other, and she leaves to the elevator she came in on. And we kill the remaining cleaners and head back outside. And we almost get run over by a fleeing truck, but we're saved by Detective Winterson, the lady we end up killing later on. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. We then come back to the station and get chewed out by Bravura for causing a scene, and adding 20 extra bodies to the morgue. But he decides to give Max this warehouse and cleaner case anyway, probably hoping it gets him killed or something. Winterson gets a case to solve the killing of one Sebastian Gay, with Mona as the main suspect, which will probably cause some tension later. This Winterson chick is sus, and as we know, soon to be dead. But with no leads on this murderous, squeaky clean company, Max decides to go talk to his old pal Vlad to get his side of the story. It was his warehouse that got shot up after all. Vlad is currently shacked up in the old Ragnarok Club, which he's converting into a restaurant called Vodka. I guess Suka Bliet was too on the nose for him. But when we arrive, Vlad's pad is getting shot up by some mobster thugs, so we jump in to help him out. We link up with Mike the Cowboy, who's one of Vlad's minions, and he squads up with us to provide some extra backup.
You are the sheriff. How about making me your deputy?
Let's go bail out your boss before he talks us all to death.
But be careful, because Mike can get easily killed if you don't protect him. But Vlad doesn't seem to care if he lives or dies, so keeping him alive is more of a matter of personal preference, I guess. But after murking these Italian goons just like old times, we find out that Vinny Gognitti is the one leading the attack on Vlad, the same guy from the first game who he shot in the gut, chased over rooftops and onto a moving subway train, and then shot a further 20 times or so, and left for dead in a raging snowstorm. But here he is, looking younger and sprier than ever. You're tankier than I thought, Vinny. I respect that. Once we reach Vinny, he pisses his pants at the sight of Max, and he flees out the front door. And we finally link up with Vlad, who also looks a bit different, and is now sporting some sleek flowing hair. Damn, seems everybody's been looks maxing since the end of Max Payne 1. So he asked Vlad why Vinny was attacking him, and he says that Vinny had made a deal with an unknown powerful individual, and seems to be taking out any competition to dominate the black market gun trade. But Max isn't really buying this story, because Vinny Gognitti has always been a bit of a cowardly goof-ass, so it's odd that he's making big boss moves like this. But Vlad also seems pretty nonchalant about it, so who really knows for now. We then cut to Max at his home, and our favorite Italian goon slayer ain't doing so hot. He's tortured by nightmares, and now lives in a shitty rundown apartment, sleeping on his couch and subsisting off of pizza, apples, and hard liquor, and enough painkillers to kill a mule. But we then begin a dream sequence, where we run down a warped and green stairwell into a morgue, where we see Mona's dead body in one of the stiff cabinets, before she appears on the autopsy table, and we then have to run from Bravura and the cops, before we teleport to Max getting interrogated by Winterson and Bravura, before we get up and put a cap in their asses. And we then wake up for real on Max's couch. And it's a great reflection of Max's current psyche, his lust for Mona, and his current and future conflicts with Bravura and Winterson. And the best part? We don't have to do any shitty blood trail platforming. Hallelujah. But it was a knock on the door that woke Max up. And behind the door is none other than Mona Sachs, and they point their guns in each other's faces just like old times. Mona is here to give Max a warning, and she says that there's a contract out for both of their heads. And Max is a little stressed out by this news, and he broods by the window. And as he looks out, sure enough, he spots a sniper taking aim at him from another window. And Max is just able to dodge the sniper firing at him, which is absolutely impeccable timing. Mona then runs off, and Max has to chase after her through his shitty apartment complex. And you can have some pretty funny interactions with his neighbors, like this shotgun-wielding grandma who offers you a free extra gun.
Careful with that gun, lady.
The detective from 304? I have another gun like this if you need it.
And another grandma who offers you some free painkillers.
The doctor gave me pills for my hip, but it's all better now. You should take them.
Damn, I wish my grandma would give me drugs and guns too. And we also gotta do some tight parkour and platforming to proceed. And sneaky athletic Max is back. This dude is definitely part gymnast. And it seems those killer cleaners are back, and have been setting up in Max's apartment complex for a while, surveilling him with a camera and wiretapping his calls. And we then see three cleaner stooges do some great comedy.
He opens the door, and boom!
Now, nothing was left of it.
So we continue on through the apartment building and continue killing the cleaners who are infesting this place like roaches, and have to parkour out of the building to escape a fire started by the cleaners who blew themselves up in Max's apartment earlier. And just be careful when going down this killer scaffolding. Not sure what killed me here. And once at ground level, we mop up the last attacking cleaners, and then return to the NYPD precinct to report the small army of cleaners that got sent to kill us. Max is stumped on how it all fits together, and what role the cleaners and Mona have in this situation. So we call up Mona, and she tells us to meet her at an abandoned funhouse that's based off a detective TV show from the 90s that suspiciously mirrors Max's own story from the first game, almost to a T. It's a recreation of Noir York City. Involves villainous doctors with syringes full of a green fluid like Valkyr, and it even has this cool looking spinning star tunnel. It's a very Remedy-esque level if you know what I mean. It's full of trippy meta-contextual design choices that feels like you're walking through a bizarro world version of the first game, and I think it's pretty sweet. We eventually find Mona in her 2003 Xbox era titties showering in the back of the place, and I know Payne bricked up in that damn fun house. Mona tells us that the Inner Circle is killing anyone who knows of their existence, and it seems that a civil war is brewing in the halls of the Asgard building. But luckily for us, Mona says she has a contact within the circle who's willing to talk. So we head out together to meet him at his upscale apartment building. But when we arrive, we find those damn cleaners got here before us. So we gotta get moving before our contact is killed. We then gotta do some more cleaner shooting in this apartment building, and I'm just having a grand old time here. And we eventually find our contact. Dead. Shit. But it's not a total loss, as Max spots a picture of our now dead contact posing with some other fellows, including one Alfred Woden. So this proves that the Inner Circle is definitely involved in this killer cleaner epidemic. We then fight our way out of the building, and we even get to hear some nice piano music.
Hey!
Damn. Noir York City should host a Thugs Got Talent show. And as we fight, we lose contact with Mona, and soon after, we run into the cleaner leader, Kaufman. Oh shit, a boss battle. But luckily, he doesn't have a lead-lined skull like the Max Payne 1 bosses, and Kaufman gets put down with only a pathetic 2 to 3 bullets. And with Kaufman dead, we take the elevator down into a bit of an awkward situation. Mona has been captured by the NYPD, and Winterson is here to catch us mic'd up and strapped up, showing that we're clearly working with this wanted fugitive. Back at the station, we get chewed out by Bravura again for aiding a murder suspect and causing another massacre. And we try to make him see that we were working with Mona to protect our contact and the others in the apartment building from the cleaners, and that these massive gunfights are vital to our investigation. But Bravura isn't hearing it, and he gives our case to Winterson and puts us in cop timeout, taking Max's gun away and planting his ass on desk duty. And while at her desk, we hear Winterson's phone ring, and that bitch is always getting fishy calls, so we pick up for her. A little bit nosy, but whatever. And when Max answers, the caller immediately hangs up. Weird. So we go talk to her in the interrogation room, where she's IDing Mona with the help of this random guy. By talking to this random guy, he tells us that Winterson is weirdly uninterested in the army of murderous cleaners, which just makes her even more suspicious. And he also says this.
It's hard to say who was out to kill who, but the ship I just fingered and the men in jumpsuits, they got into a serious firefight.
Pause. And when we exit the interrogation room, we overhear Winterson talking on the phone, saying that Mona and Max are taking the fall for the apartment incident. So we confront her on this extremely suspicious chatter, but she quickly hangs up and then storms off after threatening Max. So this bitch is definitely 100% evil. And after she storms off, we head down to the holding cells to have a chat with Mona.
Not again, Jesus!
Mona says that she's gonna die if she stays stuck in this cell, and that anyone in the station could be working for the Inner Circle. And she tells us to call up Alfred Woden to get the answers we want. So we call up Woden, but he's not home right now, so we leave him a message. And after the call, we hear a distant explosion, and see the cleaners breaking into the holding cells looking for Mona on the camera feeds, who was able to escape by taking the key off an officer who had died conveniently right next to her cell. And we then spring into action and clean up these cleaners, and we escape through the parking garage. And when we get out into the street, Mona has gone ghost, and she's nowhere to be found. But just then, Vlad pulls up in his Mercedes, and we hop in. And for some reason, Vlad has a huge baseball bat boy costume in his car, saying he's going to use it to help take down Vinny Gognitti. Somehow. We ask Vlad about the Inner Circle, and he says that they're not too special in his book, just some glorified mobsters at best. And we also ask him about Mona, but he doesn't give much of an answer, just saying that he wants to pipe her.
I would fuck her.
Right then, I hated Vlad.
Alright, bro. But then, Vlad starts ominously talking about fate, and that if your only option is to do an evil thing, is it truly evil or just fate? But foreboding conversations aside, Vlad drops us off at the funhouse, and we soon find Mona after, and we start getting freaky with her. But as Max and Mona are macking on each other and really getting into it, we start hearing distant gunshots, and it looks like the cleaners are here to break up this disgusting display of premarital sex. And we try to flee towards Mona's loft, but Max and Mona get separated, again, after a catwalk falls out from under Max. And we then have to massacre these cock-blocking cleaners throughout the funhouse. And it's a tough but fun level that really starts to ramp up the difficulty by placing a lot of enemies in fairly small areas and hiding them in the many corners and covers of the funhouse. But once we mow them all down, Max catches a fleeing cleaning van and jumps into the back of it, hoping to ride along all the way to their HQ. Luckily, Max still has the earpiece Mona gave him at the apartment building, so we use that to tell her where we ended up, which is an abandoned building complex that the cleaners are using as their base. We shoot our way through the cleaner base, and much like Max's apartment, the cleaners set fire to the place and start blowing it up, forcing us to make a break for it, shooting cleaners in our way as the building crumbles around us. And we then jump out of a window and onto some scaffolding, but Max takes a Looney Tunes-esque tumble down the scaffolding, and gets trapped under some debris. We then swap to Mona's perspective and even get to play as her. And this is the first Mona level of only 2 Mona levels in the game. And based off the game's cover, I thought we'd be playing half the game as Mona. But no, it's more of like a 80-20 split between Max and Mona, which ends up being no real issue, as Max and Mona, as far as I can tell, are functionally identical, and they both have the same bullet time and shoot dodge powers and moves. And the only difference that I can even notice is that Mona is equipped with a sweet Dragunov sniper rifle, and maybe her shorter build gives her a smaller hitbox or something. But I don't have any evidence that this is actually the case, and it's just more fun shooting and scooting at the end of the day. And we shoot our way through the building as Mona, and we catch up with Max taking his Looney Tunes tumble down the scaffolding. We then have to protect Max from attacking goons using our sniper rifle. This whole section being a fun shooting gallery that puts that Dragunov to good use. Once Max heals his broken bones and gets out from under the debris, we have to cover him as he moves around the courtyard, backtracking in and out of the building to reach other vantage points to snipe enemies that are hiding around unreachable covers. And Max's narration reflecting how much trouble he's in works great to get the tension and urgency of this section way up. Once we snipe all the attacking goons, we move to link back up with Max. But before Mona can reach Max, Winterson appears from around a corner and sticks up Mona, planning to arrest her. Max then gets in between Mona and Winterson, and is now literally being torn between his love for Mona and his duty as an officer. But shit hits the fan when Mona starts to draw her trusty deagle, and Winterson takes aim, and in the confusion,
What you say? Oh, that you only meant.
Max shoots Winterson right through the chest, sending her to the ground. Also, the fuck is going on with Max's head? We tell Mona to make like a banana and, well, you know. But while we're watching her go, Winterson, who's still alive, shoots Max in the back, and Max then plunges off of this like 3-story ledge. But even with a bullet wound in his back, and probably nursing a few broken bones, Max is still a total horn dog, having a blunt force trauma-induced sex dream, and he starts chasing Mona through the dream world hallways. And like I mentioned before, these dreams are so much better thanks to the simple fact that we don't have to do any dogshit blood trail platforming, and they feel pretty damn close to real-life dreams. But after this dream sequence where Winterson and Mona both mag dump into Max, we flash back to where the game started off, with Max lording over Winterson's dead body in the morgue. And while admiring his handiwork, he notices Winterson had a business card for Vlad's restaurant vodka on her. What exactly is their connection? But there's no time for that. And we got cleaner commandos breathing down our neck wanting to tear Max some new assholes. So we gotta get out of this doggone hospital. This section reminds me of the bat sequence from the first game, where we have to avoid enemies until we can get our hands on a gun and pop back at these thugs. So to escape, we gotta physics blast this goon with the door, run away, hide in this office room, and then quickly snag a security guard's gun after he strolls in and gets shot by these thugs. And this might take you a few tries, but Max Payne 2's improved bullet time and aim really helped to make this whole thing much smoother, and ultimately a more well-executed version of the bat sequence. Now that we're rearmed, we can then shoot our way out of the hospital, with Max determined to see the case through to the bitter end now. Max is pushing through a bullet wound and untold physical trauma after taking 2 big falls at the abandoned cleaner HQ. And is being fueled by nothing but painkillers and horniness, tweaking so hard that he starts hallucinating Mona in the corner of his eye constantly. And with no clear leads yet again, we meet with our only option left, Alfred Woden, to end this chicanery for good. And Woden isn't looking too hot, and he's now bound to a wheelchair and oxygen tank due to a nasty case of cancer. We ask Woden why the inner circle is a total shitshow right now, and he says that the circle is locked in a civil war, as an unknown faction in the circle had rebelled against the ailing Woden's control, and is now wiping out any competition they come across. Woden then reveals who started the war, none other than the Russian Rizzler himself, Vladimir Lem, and all those killer cleaners were working for him this whole time, which isn't too surprising. That ominous speech about fate and the business card on Winterson's body all makes sense now. Woden says that Vlad is going to go off Vinny Gognitti, and then will surely come to kill Woden himself, who is also Vlad's mentor. He's like some sort of mobster Jedi apprentice, I guess. And now that Vlad's betrayal has been revealed, we then return to Vodka and mow down Vlad's well-armed Russian goons that are loitering around the place, which is always a great time. And once we reach Vlad's office, we find plans for an attack on Vinny Gognitti's home. And on his answering machine, we also find a voicemail from the late Detective Winterson, asking for Vlad's help at the Cleaner HQ, and saying that she'll take care of Max and Mona for him, revealing that she and Vlad had a secret relationship, and were working together this whole time. Sweet, Max is now fully vindicated for blowing a hole in her chest. We then head to Gognitti's place to hopefully catch Vlad in the act, and we have to mow down Vinny's men, and make our way through the street's destroyed buildings to his home. And along the way, we run into some of Vinny's thugs who think we're here to help them, not recognizing Max Payne as the Punchinella Grim Reaper himself. But I guess it's understandable. I mean, the dude has a whole new face now. So we fall in line and help them out a bit, and take out some cleaner commandos. But we soon get found out by this tan jacket guy.
Cop! Max Payne rings any bells? What did you bring him here for? He tried to kill the boss earlier. Die, die, die!
Shh, don't tell them, man. And we then make it to Vinny's garage, and find Vinny himself, who's gotten into a bit of a pickle. He's fully decked out in that baseball boy mascot costume Vlad had. But after Vinny put it on, he learned that the costume was a goofy saw trap, and it has a bomb inside of it that'll explode if he tries to take it off. Damn. Feeling bad for Vinny, Max decides to help him, and we now have to escort this massive baseball bat boy around. And this level is a perfect microcosm of Max Payne's dual goofy serious tone. Max mows down dozens of goons while trying to get revenge on the man who betrayed and tried to kill him several times. All the while escorting a loudmouthed, cowardly Italian goofball trapped in a Looney Tunes Saw mascot death trap. I love it. We gotta protect Gognitti, and despite his large size, he's pretty good at staying in cover, and he'll only get lit up if you really ignore him or get separated from him, making a potentially annoying escort mission feel pretty smooth and fun. And we eventually escort him to Gognitti's apartment, which is completely full of baseball bat boy posters and memorabilia. He's a collector, you see. So it seems that Vinny got too excited, put on the costume as soon as he got it, and accidentally put himself in a death trap. Bro. It's a great moment though. There's so much personality just through the apartment's design, and Vinny's rant defending himself is pretty hilarious too.
Do you know how much this stuff is worth? I tell you, fucking much. Nothing nerdy about it. I'm a collector.
We then have to leave through the patio, but Vinny often gets stuck in the doorway, and the only way to get him through is to use some of Max's stando power to quick save and quick load to reset his AI and get him past the threshold of the door. It's a bit annoying, but nothing ripping a hole in the space-time continuum can't fix. We keep protecting Vinny until he reaches Van and escape, heading to Mona's funhouse to help disarm the bomb. But we don't find Mona at the funhouse, but a detonator toting Vlad. Uh-oh. We then cut to Mona's perspective for her second and final level. Mona scopes in on Vlad, but as she lines up, Vlad triggers the detonator, and boom. Mona then rushes in to save our guy, running through the exploding funhouse, dodging fire and debris in a very similar way to the Casa D'Angelo level from 1. But like most other aspects of this game, this level is much less punishing and trial and error-y. The devs aren't trying to kill you at every possible turn this time. And once we pull the fire alarm and put out some of the flames, we see the exploded remains of Vinny and the baseball bat boy Sue. Goddamn. Rest in pieces, Vinny. Mona eventually finds Max, bloodied and blown the fuck up, but alive. We then cut back to the moments before Vlad blew Vinny to smithereens, where Vlad dropped some truth nukes on us, saying that Woden was actually the one to kickstart the chain of events that led to Max's family being killed, as Woden had been the one to send the documents to the DA, hoping to intimidate him, where Max's wife Michelle then saw it, which led to everything to get us where we are now. In the first game, we were led to believe that Horn was the one who sent the documents, and that's why we hammered her with a metal tower and threw her mangled corpse off a skyscraper. But now that we know that it's Woden who started it all, and Vlad having betrayed us, it really seems like we have zero allies left. Vlad also reveals that Mona is working for Woden directly as a hit woman, actively hunting and killing Vlad's allies. Vlad then shoots Max right in the head, which sends Max into another dream sequence where Max chases himself through a nightmare ceilingless version of his apartment, before Dream Mona appears and smooches him back to life, where we then wake up to Mona saving us, and the 2 headshot survivors limp out of the burning funhouse. And despite Max now taking a bullet to the head on top of all his previous injuries, he's still determined to see the case through, and he and Mona both head to Woden's manor to stop all this bullshit for good. Mona and Max pull up to the mansion and shoot the place up, and it's full of Vlad's commandos packed into both cramped and long-range areas, all across this awesomely detailed and opulent mansion. And it's pretty tough, as any good final area should be, so be ready for fucking war. But after we enter the doors to the main area of the mansion, Mona pistol whips Max on his recently shot noggin and takes aim at him. But Mona looks Max right in his sensitive white boy eyes, and she too puts down her gun, unable to kill him. But as she stands down, Shadow Vlad appears and lets her rip. Blasting Mona right in the back. Vlad then berates Max, but then Woden rolls in and apologizes to Max for being the origin point of all this terrible shit that's happened to him, which is a surprisingly classy move from this evil deep state operative. But Woden then gets up out of his wheelchair and tries to struggle with Vlad, but Vlad just barrel stuffs him right in the gut and kills him. And I respect the bravery, but Woden was just straight up committing suicide here. But Woden's attack gave Max an opportunity to wrestle with Vlad, and Vlad blows a hole in the floor with his detonator during the struggle and flees, and we have to chase after him, having to hide in this panic room to avoid these exploding barrels, and having to use Woden's stair lifter to reach Vlad in this rooftop atrium area, where we kick off the final boss battle of the game. Vlad is hiding on a platform above this glass structure, continuously chucking down sticks of dynamite at us like some sort of terroristic rail worker. And our goal here is to shoot Vlad down by shooting out the pegs holding up the platform. And it's more of a visual puzzle than anything, because as long as you stay on the move, Vlad's TNT is literally too slow to hit you. So just keep circling the platform and shooting the pegs out as you go along. And once the pegs are shot out and the platform has fallen, you then gotta shoot out the pegs of the large metal object in the ceiling, which when shot out completely, will fall onto Vlad's platform, where we now have to take him out the old-fashioned way, with a little ratata. And once we put some bullets into Vlad, he stumbles down, laments about how he's supposed to be the hero of this story, and then falls to his death, crashing into the mansion foyer, and Vlad's ragdoll body gets sodomized by this table. A very fitting ending for him. And then Max crawls back to Mona, where she says the line from the opening, and she dies in Max's arms, bringing Max's dead woman count up to 3. Max gives her one last kiss, and the police arrive and recognize Max, and as they grab him, Max says,
I had a dream of my wife. She was dead, but it was all right.
And the game ends, played out to the tune of Late Goodbye by the Finnish band Poets of the Fall, who, fun fact, are great friends with Remedy it seems, and they appear later as the fictional band The Old Gods of Asgard in Control and both Alan Wake games, and have made some bangers for those games. So hearing this song come on was so damn cool for me. Sam Lake having a band on call whenever he wants to whip up some cool ass music for his games is so awesome. But with all that, that's Max Payne 2 complete. Overall, Max Payne 2 is a really great third-person shooter that improves upon its forefather in pretty much every way. The gunplay is much tighter and overall more fun. And it was a joy to blast my way through the unique and interesting levels like Max's apartment complex, the hospital, the funhouse, Woden's mansion, and more. The improved bullet time and shoot dodging on top of being really fun to use give you more options than ever to stunt on these thugs and take them out in the most efficient ways possible. And this game really cemented how bullet time should work and feel. It's honestly really impressive just how seamless and dynamic this game from 2003 is, and it feels better to play than most modern third-person shooters. I also enjoy the story here a bit more than the first game, as it gives some solid work into establishing Max and Mona's dicey and doomed relationship, instead of it being a mostly straightforward revenge story. We get a better understanding of Max's psyche through all the dream sequences, and James McCaffrey once again kills it as Max. And the whole story ends on a beautifully tragic note that feels well earned and pretty moving. But do not let this dude Max around attractive middle-aged women. It will not end well for them. Also, Max has some pretty great and now famous lines here that really make you sympathize with him even deeper. And although the plot twists and reveals were pretty unsurprising, I still really liked Vlad as the main villain due to his pure charisma and the great lines and delivery he has all throughout the game.
Somebody's getting cranky. Did you miss your meal, Max? Here, have a chill-out burger.
And Max's second story ending with a brutal gunfight and dynamite chucking contest between two former friends is a pretty fitting conclusion for a guy like Max. My only complaint with Max Payne 2 is that it wasn't long enough. It took me around 9 hours to beat Max Payne 1, whereas this game only took me slightly under 7 hours to beat. And I would have been totally cool with an extra 2 to 3 hours of levels. Maybe getting another Mona mission to further develop her side of the story, or maybe a few extra unique levels. As this game gets a lot of mileage out of its locations. We go to the funhouse like 3 times. But even then, it's no big deal, as each time you revisit a previous area, it has new layouts, enemies, and weapons to use. So this is mostly just another nitpick. And it's overall just a great gun-fu experience. And it has everything a great sequel needs to succeed. And it ends with the promise of future sequels. Max Payne's journey through the night will continue, which it indeed did, but not in the way most were probably expecting. But with that, we can take a look at the last Max Payne game we've gotten so far, and it's a unique beast unto itself. So let's not fuck around any longer, and let's dive right into this booze-fueled Brazilian nightmare, Max Payne 3. So with Max Payne dropping in 2001 and Max Payne 2 dropping in 2003, you'd expect Max Payne 3 to release sometime during 2005, maybe 2006 at the latest. But nope, Max Payne 3 took a whole console generation and almost 9 whole years to release after the sequel came out. You see, Remedy kinda, sorta, maybe lied with that last line about Max's story continuing, as Remedy had no official plans to make Max Payne 3 at the time, and instead had previously sold the rights to Max Payne to an unknown game studio you may have heard of. Rockstar, I think they're called? Some guys from England, I'm not sure. They made some games about cars that were fairly popular, I suppose, and Remedy had sold the rights to them after the release of the first Max Payne game, and Rockstar fully handled the publishing of Max Payne 2. And after that, Rockstar sat on the Max Payne IP for the better part of a decade, until releasing Max Payne 3 in mid-2012, developed fully in-house and with virtually no input from Remedy themselves. Sam Lake was no longer the writer, and that position had been taken by Rockstar founder Dan Houser, which could be disastrous. Usually, it can be very hard to make a good story based on the ideas and characters from another writer, especially in video games. But Dan here is no slouch, having several gaming writing credits under his belt at this point in time. Mostly some cozy indie games with some light farming and RPG mechanics. Nothing crazy. Just games like Grand Theft Auto 3, Grand Theft Auto 4, Red Dead Redemption, Bully, and Smuggler's Run 2, Hostile Territory. I'm just joshing though. In all seriousness, going from Sam Lake to Dan Houser is like going from a McLaren to a Bugatti. So there's a good chance we could have something really special on our hands. So did they deliver? Well, let's find out. Max Payne 3 starts with Max arriving at his new apartment in sunny Sao Paulo, Brazil, in preparation for a new job he recently got down here in the land of concert requests. They told him to come to Brazil, and he answered the call. And Max celebrates this new crib and new job the only way he knows how. Chain smoking and pounding back Kong brand liquor as static and blurry double vision shots corrupt our view of Max, reflecting his addictions. And speaking of Max himself, Who the fuck is this? This is a different Max from both Max Payne 1 and 2. My guy Max swaps heads like a faceless man. And this time, Max is now based off his legendary voice actor, James McCaffrey, who again reprises his role as Max. And I gotta be honest, James probably gives his best performance in the entire series in this game. And he's able to show off a pretty great range throughout all the terrible situations he ends up in, and the increased focus on his own personal struggles, trauma, and vices. And although the writing doesn't always hit, the voice acting makes up for any stumbles in the script. And I like Max more than ever now. Now don't get me wrong, James was fantastic in 1 and 2, but in Max Payne 3, he's special. Anyway, Max's new life in Brazil isn't off to a great start, and all he can do is get lost in the sauce and stumble around his apartment in a drunken stupor. And I don't really blame him. His wife and child have been dead for over a decade, Mona is dead, everyone he knows is dead, the cleaners blew up his house, his job sucks, Brazil is too hot, he's going to hell when he dies. It's just a tough scene. And this is all before we even start the game. And after we start a new game, we then cut to the end, like any good Max Payne game, and we see a bald and bearded Max standing over a horrifically injured policeman on an airport runway, before jumping back in time to a rooftop party in downtown Sao Paulo, Brazil, with Max sipping on some grog while overlooking the city's massive favela slum. Max is here acting out his new job as a security guard for the wealthy Branco family, alongside his other former cop buddy, Raul Passos. The family is led by Rodrigo Branco, who is the CEO of their family company, Fabricas Branco, and don't ask me what they do. I've played this game through like 3 times, and I still don't know. He's married to his wife, Fabiana, a textbook definition trophy wife, and he's flanked by his 2 younger brothers, Victor, an influential right-wing politician, and Marcelo, a douchebag party boy who loves that cocoa. And as Max is giving us a rundown on his new situation, a group of masked-up Brazilian thugs storm in from the elevator and kidnap Rodrigo, Fabiana, and Marcelo and escape, forcing Max and Raul to spring into action, and we get our first taste of the game's combat and controls. Max Payne 3 is still operating on the same skeleton of its predecessors, being a third-person shooter with bullet time, shoot dodging, you take painkillers to heal yourself, so on and so forth. But Max Payne 3 also makes some pretty big changes to the Max Payne experience that really sets itself apart, for better and for worse. And starting with the raw gunplay, Max Payne 3 gives us our most cracked Max yet. It seems the more he drinks and pops pills, the steadier his aim gets, and his aim is downright fantastic in this game. Whether he's using pistols, Uzi-type SMGs, shotguns, or assault rifles, Max will pretty much hit whatever the white aim dot is on, with very little spread to speak of, and it feels really great. It feels a lot like a tightened up version of GTA 5's shooting, if that makes sense. It has literally never felt better to pop dudes in the head, chest, and penis. And you can pull off some pretty impressive kills and jumping trick shots that you'll surprise even yourself with. Also, Max will react to his surroundings while shoot dodging, bracing himself for impact if he's about to go flying into a wall or about to land on an object. And you can fling Max's body around in some pretty hilarious ways here, and it feels great to do. And after landing a shot on an enemy, enemies have some pretty robust physics and animations that will have them realistically wobbling and stumbling to the ground after getting shot. Like if someone was desperately trying to regain control of a body that's rapidly shutting down. And it's pretty eerie in just how realistic it looks, and I love it. And the kill cams here are fucking beast. And you can keep firing during these bullet cams and slow the cams down for even more dramatic effects, letting you cinematically mag dump into thugs. And Max Payne 3 is pretty much perfect in the gunplay and presentation departments. And this increased accuracy also makes shoot dodging incredibly fun and powerful. And Max is now a full-blown master bulletmancer Matrix character, canonically shooting 5 dudes in the head in under 2 seconds, all while dolphin diving through the air. Max can now also keep firing on the ground after he lands, which is great for mopping up any goons you missed by just waiting for them to re-peek you, or for them to come charging in, giving you way more options in combat, and you no longer have to wait for Max to flex his ninja skills and do a kick up before you can start shooting again. And as for the regular bullet time, it's okay. And I only really used it in specific circumstances, as it slows everything way down, Max included. Even popping out of cover to aim is slow as molasses. So I only really used it when I really needed to land a shot on an enemy who was in some good cover. Otherwise, I could just shoot dodge or just shoot normally to succeed. And Max Payne 2 remains the undefeated bullet time god. But speaking of shooting, we need some tools, gats, sticks, pipes, pieces, and Dracos to do that. And Max's arsenal has gotten some pretty big changes in this game. In Max Payne 1 and 2, Max was a one-man armory, being able to hold every weapon he came across at once, probably storing it in his iconic leather trench coat. But Max has seemingly ditched his massive coat in the move to sunny Sao Paulo, and as a result, lost his deep pockets. But now Max can only carry what he can hold with his own 2 hands. Max can now only carry up to 3 weapons at a time. 2 small arms, which are usually pistols or Uzis, and 1 long gun, which are either assault rifles or shotguns. And if you want to dual wield, you have to drop your long guns so Max can double fist that shit. But as a trade-off, you can now dual-wield any combination of small guns. Being able to shoot off pistols and Uzis simultaneously is neat, but not always worth ditching your big stick to do so. And while I think it offers up some cool in-game details, as Max has to physically carry his long gun around, holding it in his offhand when shooting small guns, and holding it under his arm when reloading his other weapons, but only having a maximum of 3 weapons at a time down from over 10 weapons is disappointing no matter how you slice it. And due to these limited gun options, and the high accuracy across all weapons, make all the weapons feel kind of samey and interchangeable. And gone are the days of having a deep, varied arsenal with weapons that fill certain niches and situations better than others. Now, a pistol in the right hands can be just as effective as any rifle. Another huge change to Max's kit is his ability to take cover by pressing Q, a very Rockstar feature, as most of their games have a cover-based shooting system. Anything from Grand Theft Auto to Red Dead Redemption. In those games, taking cover is essential to survival. And that's no different here. Max can't move quite as well as he used to, effortlessly running around rooms, diving and slowing down time to run circles around his foes. Now Max feels noticeably slower and floatier, forcing Max to take cover before he gets his molasses ass lit up. Once you're in cover, you can pop out to aim and shoot at enemies by holding down aim with right click, and you can blind fire by just holding left mouse button fire, which gives you safer but less accurate shooting that's great for safely taking out close by enemies or enemies that are pushing up on your cover. But be careful, enemies can still shoot your weenus off even when you're blind firing, so don't do it for too long. And you can also shoot dodge out of cover as well, giving your enemies a nice little surprise when you come out of cover sideways before you bury a bullet in their brain. Cover won't completely protect you though, as you're pretty exposed when popping out to aim, and later levels will punish you heavily for being out of cover for too long with some huge damage and a few bullets to the face. So you have to line up your shots pretty quickly to succeed. But from there, the cover system is very bog standard. If you've played a GTA game from the last decade or so, you know what's going on. Painkillers now fully clear your health bar instead of just healing you in quarter doses, and it seems the Oxy has gotten more potent since 03. You can now hold an extra 9th bottle of pills to chew on. Most interestingly though, if you have above 0 painkillers stocked up, if you take a potentially fatal bullet, you'll be thrust into this sort of last stand mode, where you have to kill the thug that just shot you up, and successfully killing them will auto-consume a pill bottle, and you'll be right back in the fight, which I found to be a pretty great feature, as these enemies rack up damage on you pretty fast, and it allows you to make up for any mistakes you made at a cost. And without it, this game would probably be 4 times as frustrating, especially in hard mode. These enemies can obliterate your health in mere seconds, so it's much appreciated. Except for when your attacker uses magical interdimensional hit scan powers, and is perfectly hidden behind a wall or an obstacle after dealing a fatal blow. You just have to watch as Max dies in slow motion while flopping onto his side. But luckily, that's a pretty rare occurrence. And all these new features, and a new focus on cover-based shooting mechanics makes Max Payne 3 the most distinct entry in the series, as instead of being a free-flowing, movement and aim-based diving gun third-person shooter, it's now your much more typical third-person cover-based shooter with shoot dodging and bullet time added, which is totally fine if that's what you want. But I also understand why this is disappointing to Max Payne series veterans, who grew up on that fast-paced, aggressive gunplay that kept you schmoovin' and saucing all over these thugs' faces with your arsenal of a dozen guns jammed down your pants. But at least the shooting looks and feels fantastic here. And in my opinion, third-person shooting can't really get more solid than this. But anyway, back to the story. We rescue Fabiana after doing some slide shooting, and we chase the thugs into the parking garage. And along the way, we can find a drop photo of Rodrigo and Fabiana, which is a collectible clue, an item that you can pick up across all the levels for some extra background lore and info, much like the interactable objects from the first game. But I only really collected the clues that I happened across. Max doesn't call out the clues verbally like he used to in Max Payne 1, and I found clue hunting to be pretty unintuitive. It's hard to tell what objects in the environment could be a clue and what aren't, and the only way to truly tell is to see if the collect clue pop-up appears or not. And the same goes for the golden gun parts, but those are just pure extras. Anyway, we shoot up the thugs in the garage, and we shoot out their van's wheel to save Rodrigo. And as we mop up these guys, a squad of heavily armed cops show up and start executing any still living thugs. But another cop, some guy named De Silva, shows up and gets them to back off for now, showing us the current divisions in the police forces of Sao Paulo. Raul catches up with us and congratulates us on our mass killing, saying that these thugs are from a gang known as Commando Sombra, and he then takes Max back home, who celebrates in the only way he knows how: pills and booze. Once Max has had his fill, we then cut to him on a helicopter, which is piloted by Passos, and we're already on his next assignment, protecting Marcelo, Fabiana, and her sister as they fly into an upscale club to take their minds off of the mass shooting and near kidnapping they just suffered. Max has some stiff and awkward banter with his clients, and Fabiana introduces her sister, a social worker who works with the kids in the favelas, and her name is Giovanna. Before we land and head inside to the club, Max gets psychologically tortured by Marcelo's god-awful banter.
I've been working far too hard.
Like a whore during Fleechy Weeky, as my roommate used to say. You like that, Max?
That's pretty funny.
And the torture continues for Max after they enter the club, with the loud dance music and Marcelo's bitch-mate spoiled brat attitude driving Max to go get hammered at the club bar. Max is pounding back straight scotch when, just like at the rooftop party, a bunch of masked up goons materialize and start causing chaos, kidnapping Fabiana again and grabbing her sister. And Max dives through a solid glass wall and starts popping heads. And it's a huge and chaotic scene in the club, and it feels lifted right out of a GTA game. It's great. We continue shooting through the club, and we can even find this other retired cop hiding in a bathroom stall. And this guy is like the complete inverse of Max. He's also a retired cop, but he's had a full career, has 2 kids in college, and is in Brazil for vacation and charity work. Whereas Max is familyless, addicted to booze, and is in Brazil working an extremely violent job that he couldn't really say no to. So this guy existing is like God just laughing at Max. We then fight our way out onto the roof and hop onto Passos' helicopter by jumping off the building, grabbing onto the chopper's legs in midair, and then muscling up to get inside. Alcoholism be damned. Max is still elite, sneaky athletic. God damn. We then spot Fabiana and her sister getting loaded into another helicopter, but Giovanna breaks free and starts running away, and we have to protect her from the chopper in a long-range shooting gallery. Max even falls out of the helicopter and has to shoot RPG-toting thugs while inverted on the helicopter's legs like a gun-toting sloth. We then hop off the helicopter and chase after Giovanna, and we find her after mowing down a dozen or so more goons. And we learn that Passos and Giovanna actually have a relationship. Just look at that loving hug. We got Giovanna back, but unfortunately, the Commando Sombra thugs had escaped with Fabiana, who was being flown to God knows where. So all Max can do is go home and pop some beans and feel angry at himself. We then cut to Rodrigo Branco's office, where he just received a ransom note for Fabiana's return. The Brancos have no idea who could be out to get them like this, and Max, feeling bad for losing Fabiana, offers up himself and Passos to hand over the ransom money in person. So with no other options, Max and Raul fly over to a nearby soccer stadium to hopefully get Fabiana back. The deal starts out a bit tense, but it seems to be working, until a laser sight appears and starts sniping the goons that we're trying to deal with, and even blasts Max right through the left arm. Ouch. The thugs then run off with the money, and we have to escape into the stadium with Passos, Max reeling from the huge hit he took in the arm. We follow Raul, stumbling and moaning until we find a team doctor's office, and we get patched up, Max shaking off this hole in his arm surprisingly well, and once he's patched up, he's about as good as new. He can even dive on that arm with his full weight after shoot dodging, which can't be pleasant, but thank God for pills. So we continue on through the stadium, and it's about at this mission that you'll really start to notice just how many cutscenes there are in this game. And not just the in-between mission cutscenes, but the in-mission cutscenes themselves. The mission cutscenes often progress Max through to the next area of a mission, and give a little bit of extra dialogue. But these things are constantly playing, and are actively wresting away control from you as you gotta stop the action and wait a bit for Max to progress to the next part of the level. Now don't get me wrong, the cutscenes are pretty great. The voice acting and writing are extremely solid, and the cinematography and animations look smooth and professional. And the effects and shots cut up into comic book style boxes are pretty visually interesting to look at. But the game's pace can really start to drag when you're constantly forced to stop playing and just watch Max do his thing. And you'll notice the basic structure of these missions pretty quickly. That being a series of cutscenes linked together through fun but linear shooting galleries, which is a pretty large change from the previous Max Payne games, whose levels were still pretty linear and limited in size, but they were much more open and unguided, having the player study the level and its environment design to figure out how to progress forward, whilst getting into free-flowing gun battles along the way, with actual cutscenes being fairly few and far between outside of the graphic novel cutscenes. And it is what it is, and on a first-time playthrough, it's really no big deal because you want to see what happens. But any subsequent playthroughs really do get bogged down by the constant game stoppages. Anyway, we eventually find the thug who took the ransom money, but then a group of unknown yet heavily armed and armored thugs appear and try to intercept that ransom money. And the sniper who attacked us earlier is a part of this mysterious group of army men. We shoot through the stadium some more, and we even have to cover Passos with a sniper rifle shooting gallery. And once we help him escape, we find that the military thugs finally caught the guy with the ransom money. But before they execute him and take our racks, we hear the soon-to-be-dead thugs say that they're keeping Fabiana at some docks on the Tiete River, giving us our one and only lead. We then have to clear out one last sniper's nest, and then Max does this. All with a 2-centimeter sized hole in his arm, mind you. Did Max do gymnastics when he was younger? But regardless, with the snipers dead and most of the thugs gunned down, Max and Passos book it to the chopper and escape. But we see two military guys aim an RPG at their chopper, holding Max and Raul completely dead to rights. but they ultimately decide to let them go, despite the fact that they just killed around 50 or so of their men. Maybe they'll save big on payroll for the month or something. But despite the impressive kill count, the mission was mostly a complete failure. The money is gone, and we only know where Fabiana might be with no guarantee, and Max has a fresh new hole in his arm. But this shootout with Passos at our side gets Max a bit nostalgic for their first shootout together, and we cut back to Max sitting in a bar in Hoboken, rocking his classic Max Payne 2 outfit, trench coat and funny tie and all. And it seems Max hasn't been doing so hot since the end of Max Payne 2, spending his days wasting away in a bar, knocking back scotch and getting harassed by DJ Pauly D here and some other Italian goons, one of which, Tony, is the son of a powerful mob boss, and it's looking pretty bleak for our guy. Tony even starts waving his gun around in Max's face like a lunatic, until who else but Raul Passos steps in, who gets Tony and Pauly D to fuck off for the time being. Raul introduces himself to Max, saying that he and Max went to the police academy together, but Max can't really remember him. Raul then tries to hire Max as a bodyguard like he is in the present, but Max refuses for now. Wasting away at the bar is just way too fun. But Raul sticks around, dancing, chatting, and drinking with Max, and Max starts to warm up to this friendly fella. That is until the Jersey Shore crew pull back up, this time a bit more armed. This woman, who is the only other patron in the bar, starts jawing at Tony, causing him to hit her, which activates Max's dying woman trauma, and Max blasts a hole right through Tony's gut, killing him where he stands. A great choice for humanity, but a terrible choice for Max himself, who's now in a 2v1000 gang war after slaying the heir to the Hoboken crime family, and we have to shoot our way out of the bar. And this is one of my favorite levels in the game, and it really makes me wish Rockstar made a whole Max Payne game in the neo-noir setting of New York and New Jersey. Urban settings like this are their bread and butter, and everything in this level looks great, and it felt so good to be back mowing down Italians by the dozens. If Max Payne 4 ever happens, it's gotta go back to noir York City. Max and Raul eventually make it back to Max's apartment, which looks even shittier than his Max Payne 2 flop apartment. Raul tells Max, "Damn bitch, you really live like this?" And he offers him the Brazilian job again. But Tony's vengeful gangster dad soon shows up and surrounds Max's apartment, so we gotta move out and shoot our way through the apartment building in a very similar manner to the apartment level in Max Payne 2. Max's crazy neighbor even shows up and suicide bombs himself to take out some thugs, and to give Max an escape route. What a bro. Rest in power. We then shoot our way through the rooftops and shoot thugs from a collapsing water tower. We eventually escape with Passos into an alley, where Max finally takes him up on his job offer. We then cut ahead in time to Max and Raul boating on the Tiete River, looking for the Commando Sombra hideout that Fabiana might be being held in. We also learn that the militia who attacked us at the stadium are some sort of right-wing paramilitary group that are called the Crasha Preto, and they had somehow gotten wind that we'd show up there with a lot of money, so it seems like someone is selling us out behind the scenes. But for now, we need to find Fabiana, so we infiltrate the docks and take out some thugs, and sure enough, we find Fabiana on some security feeds, beat up, but still in one piece. And we shoot our way to her location, but she's already gone by the time we get there, and we chase her and her captors to the docks, where they hop on a boat and attempt to flee after a huge gunfight on said docks. And be careful not to shoot dodge right into the water, as these docks limit how much dodge space you get to work with. But once we reach the end of the docks, Max then gets blown up by exploding gas tanks that he foolishly stood too close to, but we get a sick action shot out of it. And Max is no worse for wear, so we're good. We then get scooped by Passos, and we then enter into a boat-based shooting gallery with an unlimited ammo FAL, where we have to shoot incoming attack boats, grenades, and thugs on the riverbanks. And it's pretty fun and ridiculous. The game has gone full action movie schlock mode. But funnily enough, this shit kind of tracks with the Max Payne series at large, as despite the game's dark, serious, and personal story involving Max's struggle with addiction, depression, and finding his will to go on in a violent and evil world, we can still enjoy unserious moments of pure action, where Max shoots boats so hard they explode, and he can do a slow motion boat jump where he bullet time headshots 5 thugs from an airborne boat that just drove off a huge ramp. But that jump took all the juice out of our boat, which breaks down as the Commando Sombra boss Serrano boats away with Fabiana. And despite the body count, it's another overall mission failure. And Fabiana is definitely a cooked product now if she wasn't before. And Max is feeling the disappointment, and he falls asleep while pounding back scotch shots at his kitchen table. And Max is woken up by Passos the next day, who again asks, "Damn bitch, you really live like this?" And he says that we need to go see the boss. So we head on over to the Bronco HQ, and all the Bronco boys are there, and they're all pretty irritated at all the shit coming their way recently.
You fucking pair of clowns! I'm sorry, sir.
Rodrigo is fed up and he wants to get the fuck out of Sao Paulo as soon as Fabiana is back. But Victor and the Ufe police chief Becker want him to stay. Victor reassures his brother that things will turn out okay, but something about the way he says it is pretty ominous.
Things will get better.
For all of us.
Victor then rounds up Marcelo, Raul, and Becker, and they all leave, leaving just Max and Rodrigo behind. Rodrigo is properly freaked out, and while he's venting to us, we see Crush Prado goons start moving in on the building from the security cams. But the building's security system suspiciously isn't working properly, and we're forced to blast these bastards the old-fashioned way. And we also have to escort this poor IT guy through the offices to restart the security system, as these gang goons rappel in through the ceiling and lay complete siege to the place. Damn, someone must really fucking hate Rodrigo Bronco. Anyway, we make it to the lobby just in time for a military truck to smash through the front door. But Max calmly shoots the driver, and then he does a moon jump to shoot even more attacking thugs. And we have to kill a new enemy type, the highly armored thug, I don't really know what his real name is, who can take a mag of bullets to his thick helmet. And I could never defeat one of these guys without taking significant damage. He can blast you when you poke out of cover to shoot, or will blast you after shoot dodging. But luckily, I had enough pills to tank these bullets, and with enough bullets to the head, he goes down too. But now that we've seemingly neutralized most of the attackers, we head back to Rodrigo's office to check on him, only to find him neatly executed. One bullet to the back of the head. Fuck. Not only that, the security footage of his assassination was wiped too, leaving Max completely in the dark as to who killed him. As it wasn't Crush Prado, they never gained access to his office. But while fumbling around with a frame photo of Fabiana, Max notices a bomb planted under Rodrigo's desk and makes a break for it before getting blown off the balcony into the courtyard below. And when Max wakes up again, the whole building is on fire, and we see the IT guy dead in the explosion. Fuck. 0 for 2 today, and it's only noon. The building looks totally foobarred, and there's an amazing amount of details to this destruction. We stumble our way through the lobby, and we find a Prado soldier missing a leg and crawling on the ground. So we interrogate him as to why do all this just to kill Rodrigo. But the one-legged man reveals that they came to kill Max, not Rodrigo, as revenge for their shootout at the stadium. And this whole attack was essentially just a get-back. We also ask him where Fabiana is, and he says that the Commando Sombra have her held hostage in the favela. And thanks to this extremely valuable information, Max shows some class and pulls the man out of the building. And despite surviving yet another huge attack, Max is now at his lowest point. His employer Rodrigo is dead, Fabiana is still held captive, and he has no idea who has it out for the Broncos and why. And every mission he's been on has ended in pretty much complete failure. Now Max could just easily give up, cut his losses, and leave or wither away into nothing. But instead, he says fuck all that shit. Fuck the booze, fuck the pills, well maybe not the pills. And if he's a dead man walking, he might as well try to take control of his shitty Chungus life. And he will try to save Fabiana anyway. And to mark his new mindset, he shaves off his hair, leaving him bald with a thick beard, hoping to use it as a disguise going forward. We then cut to Max calling up Victor and Marcelo to let them know that he's still alive. Victor and Marcelo looking oddly nonchalant about their brother dying and their company HQ getting blown to smithereens. But regardless, Max tells the pair that he's in the favela looking for Fabiana, where she's apparently holed up in a place called Nova Esperanza, and he makes his way into the favela, rocking a sweet-ass parrot tropical shirt. Max gets tailed by some local kid, and asks him where he might find Fabiana, showing him a picture of her. And the kid seems to understand, and we follow his lead until we get pressed by some local thugs, who rob Max and push him into a gutter. But Max isn't too bothered by it, and we get up, and we press on. And we even run into the cop from the club bathroom, who's in the favela doing charity work for the local kids, whereas Max is here about to cause a massacre. It's almost poetic. We then enter and CD is being kind here, brothel and bar, and run into someone unexpected, none other than Wilson De Silva, the seemingly less evil cop from the rooftop party, and he buys us a drink, and he whips out his case files for us, as him and Max have similar goals of figuring out what's going on with the Broncos. He shows us Serrano, and he tells us that we've almost completely wiped out Commando Sombra's fighting force, which is nice to get acknowledged for our hard work, but they're nothing compared to these Crush Prado thugs. And De Silva tells us about their leaders, Neves and Milo Rego, and he also reveals that they're popular with right-wing politicians like one Victor Bronco, who often use these guys as muscle to do their not-so-glamorous jobs. And Victor even had them wipe out some villages to clear the land for development in the past. De Silva is convinced that all this recent violence and craziness traces all the way back to Victor, but he's not sure as to what ends, which makes total sense. Victor has worked with the Prado in the past, had insider knowledge on the ransom exchange that he could have passed on to the Prado. And he also conveniently left with Marcelo and Passos just right before the Crush Prado attacked Broncos HQ. So there's too many coincidences to ignore. De Silva also gives Max a new gun, knowing how beast he is with the tool. And he tells us that Fabiana should be right up the hill, and he heads out, telling us to call him up if we survive. And as he leaves, some thugs immediately walk in and start racially profiling Max, pressing him to give him some money or his gun. And disgusted by this display of racism, Max shoots up the entire bar to teach these thugs a lesson, bartender and strippers included, and we head out to find Fabiana. We shoot our way through the favela, and I'm getting some heavy Modern Warfare 2 campaign vibes from this. And there's a million different corners, doors, and balconies that enemies can pop out from, so be careful. We also do some sick-ass chain ride gun fu, but don't fall. And we continue our one-man siege into the favela in some tough firefights. And we eventually reach Serrano's stronghold, where we find not only Fabiana, but Marcelo and Giovanna too, and they're all being held captive by like 6 thugs. Shit. So with no other options, Max just barges in waving his gun around, which immediately gets taken. If that were me, I would have just shoot dodged through the door and would have one-tapped each little thuggy before I even hit the ground. But alas, Max demands Serrano to not kill the girls, but Serrano don't care, and he blasts Fabiana right through the head, killing her. Damn, man. And that brings our dead woman count up to 4. He also shoots Marcelo in the leg, but who gives a fuck about that guy? We then hear a helicopter nearby, and the building we're in starts getting attacked by the Ufe police, and this scares the pants off Serrano and his boys, who leave with the remaining hostages, leaving Max with one pistol-armed thug to watch him. We then cut back in time again, to Max in New Jersey, standing over his wife and daughter's grave, giving them one last goodbye before heading to Brazil with Passos, who is here with us. Max also writes off the second game's, quote, Mona business, as simply a temporary bout of insanity brought on by the extended grief of losing his family, which may be possible, but I think there was a bit more to that relationship than just horny insanity. But we don't have long to say goodbye, as a group of suspicious men approach us, and we start blasting almost immediately. The mob still wants Max dead, and we now have to shoot our way through the graveyard, taking cover behind the tombstones to proceed. And it's another really awesome level that again really makes me wish that we got a Rockstar Max Payne game in New York or New Jersey. The design and vibe of this place is again fantastic. Tony's pops really isn't taking his death well, and it seems every thug in New Jersey is out to whack Max. Fully armed goon kill squads, a sniper, suicidal truck drivers, and they're all trying to get our goats. And eventually we get captured in a mausoleum ambush and are taken to the boss himself, who wants to take out Max and Raul Wild West style for killing his son and Paulie D, by making them dig their own grave, even clonking Raul with the shovel. But the boss gets so worked up about his son's death, he needs to get carried away by his thugs so he can regain his composure, leaving only 2 thugs to guard Max and Raul. And you can probably figure out what happens next.
Pocket sand.
We then have to fight our way through the morgue and the funeral home itself. And after fighting off a mobster siege by doing the classic tactical move of sneaking up behind them, Max and Raul finally find a phone. And Raul gets in contact with some friends to come pick them up and to exfil them out of Jersey. We then snap back to Max staring at Fabiana's dead body, with the unnamed Brazilian goon still jawing at us instead of shooting us. But Max just completely bitches him for being too damn loud. We then escape Serrano's pad into a chaotic scene. Everyone is running for cover, and the Ufe police have moved in and immediately started causing trouble, shooting and detaining civilians en masse with little rhyme or reason. And apparently these brutal smash and grab operations are common occurrences in the favela. We eventually spot Marcelo and Giovanna being escorted by the cops, so Max tails them, gunning down cop and thug alike, and even blowing up an entire helicopter by sniping a moving RPG warhead while sliding down a roof. Not sick. And we see up close that these cops are about on par with Imperial Japan in the brutality and disregard for human life department, viciously torturing and brutalizing favela residents and death marching them through the streets, on top of just random slaughtering and mass arrests. We continue following the police, hoping to find Marcelo and Giovanna, and we see something strange. These Ufe police officers are making deals with the leaders of Crasha Preto, handing over recently arrested people for some unknown reason. Now what's going on here? And not long after, we find our targets, Giovanna and Marcelo, but they're in a bit of a sticky situation. Marcelo is stuck in a stack of tires and is promptly lit on fire and scorched to death. Holy shit, let's fucking go, dude. Max then runs in and gets into a fight with the Preto goons, and we start a boss fight with the half-burned phase guy, Milo Rego, which is just a QTE, and like the only QTE of its kind in the entire game, interestingly enough. It's literally like a one-off thing. And we wrestle away Milo's machete and slice his neck open in revenge. Max then grabs Giovanna, and they hide in a poop-covered drain for several hours, before they get back up and head to a nearby bus station to try and get in contact with Passos to come pick them up via helicopter. But hiding out in the open just ends up making the evil cops recognize them, so Max and Fabiana go hide in the bus graveyard, where Giovanna reveals that she's pregnant with Raul Passos' child. But then we spot some goons moving in to take us out, so we give them a little present, and we escort Giovanna through the bus station, protecting her from several near-death encounters, before we then board a bus ourselves to escape, with Giovanna driving and Max shooting out of the window, in another moving shooting gallery much like the boat chase. But instead of taking a badass jump off a ramp, Giovanna just crashes the whip into 2 walls. But she and Max are no worse for wear, and Max sends Giovanna onto a nearby roof to flag down Passos' helicopter, and he tells her to wait for him. And Max makes a heroic stand against the attacking thugs, mowing down like 15 of them in the back of the bus. But just as Max guns down the last thug, he sees Passos' chopper fly overhead, taking only Giovanna and leaving Max to die. What a fucking asshole, man. But even though Passos left us, we aren't completely alone in Sao Paulo, and our guy De Silva pulls up right in the nick of time, and we hop in. Max rants to De Silva about Passos going all Benedict Arnold on him, but then De Silva drops a truth nuke on us, telling Max Passos was being paid by Victor Branco, not Rodrigo, and Victor had even been the one to fund his recruitment drive to New York, where he conveniently ran into Max. And it seems that Max was brought in to take the fall. Perhaps old Tricky Vic here had been playing to cap his brother for a long time, and Max would take the blame for his inevitable killing, an unstable alcoholic ex-cop who was a known mass murderer. It could be perfect. But who knows for sure, though? We'd have to ask the guy himself. And De Silva moves on to a new topic, Panama, and he says that Max should have known what they were doing there. Wait, what happened in Panama? Well, we cut back to it, and we see Max on a boat, running security for the Broncos in his early days. And this time, he's running security for the boat's owner and a friend of the Broncos, some lady named Daphne. She's not that important. Which is currently passing through the Panama Canal. And Passos and Marcelo are here too. Great. Max is getting sloshed off the free boat booze, and while he's taking shots, Passos and Marcelo discuss some suspicious and nondescript truck, and Max goes to lay down after getting too loaded up on tequila. And after passing out, Max wakes up some unknown time later, and wakes up to find the boat being raided by military-looking fellas. And they don't seem very friendly, so we give them the old American hello, and we fight our way back up to the top deck. And this level really starts to jack up the difficulty. The boat has limited cover options, you have very few painkillers to work with, and the enemies seem more accurate and deadlier than ever before. And I got lit up more than a few times, and I swear this guy just shot me through the cover. And we see that these soldiers are tearing up the boat looking for something hidden in its walls, and it seems that Marcelo and Raul are smuggling something. But Max, still half drunk and fired up from killing 20 goons, makes him write it off for now. And once we clear the boat, we spot Passos and Marcelo at the truck they mentioned earlier, acting highly suspicious and avoidant.
What about what's her name? Daphne.
Do whatever you think is best.
I think it's best we try to go find her.
Yeah, okay.
But Max again disregards this, and he and Passos move out to find Daphne. Passos coming along helps quell Max's suspicions for now. So we kill more goons, take a zipline to bullet time on these thugs, and we even shoot through this Panama Canal exhibition center. And at the roof, we find the rest of the boat's passengers, dead from a mass execution. But despite all the boat passengers besides Passos and Marcelo being brutally executed, and their extremely suspicious behavior, Max doesn't really follow up on this incident until De Silva jogs his memory right then. And De Silva gives us his hypothesis on what happened. He believes that it was money that the Broncos were smuggling, and it was being brought to a Panamanian banker who was friendly to them, who could easily launder it there. And De Silva gives us a lesson in Brazilian inheritance customs, telling us that the elder child, Rodrigo in this case, usually ends up with all the family's wealth, and his younger siblings have to mooch off of him. And Victor's campaigns were even being financed by his big bro. And now Victor, a tough-on-crime candidate, now just lost 2 brothers to some gang violence, and it's a perfect tragic story for him. And it all seems to be coming up Victor. Marcelo was a bum-ass idiot, and is now a charred husk, and Passos was more than happy to just take the money and ignore the rest. And Max was the picture-perfect fall guy. It was all rigged from the start. And De Silva decides to take us for a drive, taking us to this huge abandoned hotel that people seem to disappear into. And it may be where those people who got arrested and handed off to the Crusher Prado might have ended up. So we get out and head inside to investigate. Max even fashions a makeshift suppressor out of a water bottle to start his infiltration, which we immediately make irrelevant. Stealth is not really a thing in this game. And this hotel is a real dump, and is crawling with Prado goons who are incinerating some suspicious trash bags. We even find a photocopy of Raul Passos' ID, which reveals that he's not even Brazilian. He's Colombian. The fuck? Anyway, we continue through this amazingly shitty and foreboding hotel, until we reach a room full of injured and mutilated people. And we even find that thug Serrano in here, but he's completely despondent from what looks like some insane torture. And he's just so pathetic looking, Max just lets him go. His current existence being punishment enough for killing Fabiana. And we get on the roof and shoot through more thugs. And I even run into this piano, and if you interact with it, Max will roughly bang out the original keyboard theme song. And it's such a great little moment.
There it was, the soundtrack to my life.
I miss that little MIDI piano. And in the next room, we finally see what's going on here, as we run into a doctor moving some organs around. It seems that the Crusher Prado have been running a full-on organ harvesting clinic, stealing blood and vital organs to sell and fund themselves. And this doctor was even at the Broncos rooftop party, showing just how deep Victor's connections run here, and it all comes back to him. He commands Becker and the Ufe, who deal fresh bodies and weapons to the Crusher Prado, who act as kill squads for Victor, and repeat. It's pretty diabolical. But as Max yells at the doctor, in barges Serrano, who yells at the doctor, and he's got that crazed look in his eye. So Max gives him the green light, and he grabs a scalpel and stabs Brazilian Mengele to death here. And Max moves on to find some C4 just laying around. So we plant it on these exposed pillars to shut this shit down. And once we've got all the bombs planted, we head onto the roof, detonator in hand, and we confront the other Crusher Prado leader Neves, who says that it's totally fine to harvest human organs like this because he's paid for them for an honest price. But Max isn't satisfied with that logic, and he triggers the detonator, which causes the whole building to start collapsing. And we have to fight the hardest boss in this game, a heavily armed thug on this roof right above us. You can't shoot from cover or even blind fire at him, because he'll just rain down bullets on you as soon as you expose yourself. And shoe dodging will leave you completely exposed as you land, so you're kind of forced to tank several bullets and burn a pill bottle or two to take him out. And I was able to kill him by just tanking the bullets and unloading into him the best I can during those last stand precision shot events. And even then, I barely beat this dude. But once he's dead, Max falls over from an explosion shockwave, and Neves shows up to point his gun at Max and gloat at him. Amateur mistake. And Neves gets domed by Raul Passos? He came back? Seems that he felt bad about leaving Max, and had made the pretty ballsy move to come back and save him, redeeming himself from peeling out on us earlier. Raul confirms his role in all of this, and he says that Victor and Marcelo just wanted to get Rodrigo to loosen up his grip on the family fortune. But, seems things have gotten a tad out of hand. They didn't expect their gringo fall guy to turn into an unkillable one-man army. I guess they didn't play the first 2 games. But Raul and Max escape on a helicopter that the Prado kindly left behind, and they fly off. We then see a well-dressed Max seeing Raul and Giovanna off. And Raul apologizes for getting Max involved in all this shit, and nearly killing him about 10 times over. But Max mostly forgives him, and in fact, feels a lot of empathy for Raul, as he sees a lot of himself in him, and he hopes he can have a nicer family life than Max himself did, with hopefully much less family slaying at the hands of drug fiends. Raul and Giovanna leave, and we hop in the car with De Silva, who wants to make a move on Becker and the Ufe for this newly exposed organ harvesting operation. And to get him, he's just going to drop Max off at the Ufe's front door and let this bullet-bending gringo light the place up and stack the corpses to the ceiling. And Max is more than ready. Max walks in and is immediately arrested and gets interrogated and beaten by Ufe goons, asking him what he's doing there. And Max feigns deafness to pull off a Batman Arkham double stealth takedown, and he smashes the guards' heads together to clonk them out. And he arms himself to begin his massacre, because today, blue lives don't matter. Our impromptu massacre starts a prison riot, and we have to shoot our way through the tight corridors full of well-armed and armored goons. And many Ufe officers have helmets, so they require 2 or more headshots to take down, which is no problem for a crack shot killer like Max. And these guys start throwing pretty much everything they got at you, sending APCs, another armored guy, and smoking out entire rooms just to get to Max. And it's pretty cool seeing their gun lasers through the smoke, and this was always a super memorable moment for me. And we continue blasting our way through, and even do a quick Batman Arkham reference again, crawling through a vent to escape a gassed out stairwell. And in the server room we enter from the vent, we finally find the deleted security footage from the day Rodrigo was killed. And we finally see his killer, an Ufe general named Bachmeyer, this freaky deaky ass hairless blue-eyed dude that we saw handing off the meat prisoners to the Crusher Prado back in the favela. And it's not long until we run into the man himself, and he and Max have a standoff at the door before he retreats, and we have to chase him through this bullet-time slide cart hallway, and through a mock siege training area, finally to this central command room, where we run into Bachmeyer again, who has fortified himself on the 2nd floor, so we have to get creative. The dude is camping in his cover, so the bullets can't reach him, and he can blind fire all day from up there, so we have to instead shoot the vents and light fixtures above him, and drop them on him like it's a Tom and Jerry cartoon, and clean up any attacking Ufe goons who run in. And it's a pretty mid boss fight, and I died a few times from the Bachmeyer blind fire spraying me down, and a goon shooting me through a wall I couldn't hit him back from. But just keep spraying at the ceiling, and once you drop the 2nd vent on him, Bachmeyer stands up all dazed and exposed. And from there, we just need to give him a little love tap, and we avenge Rodrigo by killing this hairless demon. We then enter Becker's office and corner him, and Max starts to strangle him a bit. But while we're roughing this bastard up, Victor appears behind us, gun in hand. I told you it's all coming up tricky Vic. And despite Max still being alive, we've done pretty good for Victor so far. Neutralizing Commando Sombra due to Max killing so goddamn many of their goons, they're no longer an effective fighting force. And the same goes for Crasha Pareto, who also suffered extreme losses at Max's hand. And we just demolished their entire organ harvesting hotel HQ. But while Victor is scolding Max, Max tries to disarm him, but Becker tases Max in the ass, and they both run off. And Max tries to chase them, but they bar the door behind them, which Max is unable to kick down with his immense gringo strength.
Out of here. Rich people love to fly away.
God damn it!
Forcing him to leave through a side door. And Victor and Becker are probably going to try to fly out of the country now, so Max and Da Silva head to the airport to look for them. Max hoping nobody will recognize him as the guy who shot up an entire UFA HQ and killed around 60 officers in just an afternoon. But the cops recognize him almost immediately, so it's time to start letting shit pop. And Max runs behind the front desks and hops onto the luggage conveyor belt. And we can take a little ride shooting UFA cops with our Desert Eagle like we're on some homicidal merry-go-round. We don't know where Vic and Becker are, but we can follow the trail of UFA thugs right to their location. And we have an awesome shootout in this huge airport terminal, this being one of my favorite levels in the game. And at this point, you'll be in total revenge kill mode. Gunning these guys down in this huge area looks and feels great, and combined with this sick music, it's enough to amp anyone up to go murder a Brazilian politician. We then hop on the airport tram to the tarmac, shooting it out with a passing train full of goons and having to clear out another smoke squad attack. But now they're all shoved in a small train car, so the smoke can't save them. Just keep spraying. Max then sees that his train is barreling towards a sudden stop, so Max does this insanely athletic diving jump into the other train car. 10 out of 10 form. That was sexy. And we finally reach the tarmac. A bit banged up, but still standing. And we find Victor and Becker. Victor boarding a private plane and preparing to skedaddle. So we make ourselves known, and we finally get our showdown with Becker. Becker's got a huge squad of UFA shooters, and he's fortified himself with a riot shield and a grenade launcher, which seems scary at first, but there's no sweat here really. Becker just makes you shoot a grenade out of the air every so often, and the rest is just a challenging, but not an ordinary shooting gallery. And once we destroy all the UFA goons and their reinforcements, Max runs up a plane staircase, Shoot dodges off of it, and shoots at a grenade Becker launches off, blowing it up in his face, horrifically injuring him, and the dude is half meatball now. Jesus. And with that, we're back where we started, Max lording over the injured Becker like some dime store angel of death. And we can either choose to execute Becker, or just let him die of his horrific injuries. And I wanted to shoot him, but I had actually run out of Desert Eagle ammo in this level, so I didn't shoot him, to maintain continuity. Da Silva then pulls up out of the blue, and we chase after Victor's fleeing plane, mowing down attacking UFA goons, trucks, APCs, and choppers with Becker's grenade launcher. It's so peak. We then give Victor's plane backshots so vicious, the entire thing breaks in half, and we see Victor stumble out of the wreckage, where Max and Da Silva detain him. Da Silva convinces Max not to execute Victor Serrano style, and tells him to let him go to prison and trial instead. Max obliges, and Victor starts chuckling, saying that the shitty Brazilian court system will surely let him walk. But Max makes sure it's with a lip, smashing his leg Kevin Ware style. Couch. We then cut to Max at a beach bar in the state of Bahia, looking like he's finally on a normal vacation. And on the TV at the bar, we see a news report that gives us a rundown on the fallout of the last few days. After Becker's death, the UFA had been disbanded due to their connections to the recently revealed organ harvesting trade at the hotel. And we also get the fantastic news that Victor had hung himself in prison after being exposed for laundering money from the whole operation. It looks like he won't be walking, but flying right out of there. And after seeing the news report, Max gathers his things, takes a look over the ocean, and with that, Max Payne 3, and the series as a whole, ends for now. And overall, Max Payne 3 is still a really great third-person shooter romp with excellent feeling gunplay and shoot-dodging mechanics, all wrapped in a brutal and engaging story that really pushes Max to his brink. And we get to see sides of him we haven't really seen yet before, and James McCaffrey absolutely kills it. He has his best performance as Max here, and he really gets to flex his range with his character, which is helped by some pretty great stylized cutscenes and an overall solid story that isn't afraid to mix the somber themes of addiction, depression, grief, and death with staple your ballsack to the ceiling action set pieces, where Max guns down 10 goons from an airborne boat, or blows up 7 vehicles and then a plane with a stolen grenade launcher, which perfectly tracks with the rest of the series. This shit has been very brutal yet insanely ridiculous since day one, and I'm glad to see Rockstar go nuts with it. There's also a great and varied selection of levels here, going from New Jersey bars and graveyards to Brazilian favelas, soccer stadiums, airports, offices under siege, organ harvesting rundown hotels, and even a detour to the Panama Canal. It keeps the game consistently interesting and fresh. But it's not a perfect game though, and it's far more linear than its older brothers, and it's less of a high-octane run-and-gun shooter, and now your more typical standard cover-based shooter. And you have much less weapons to work with at any given time, and the weapons do feel fairly samey, despite the strong shooting mechanics. And the huge amount of cutscenes can interrupt the pace and really bog down some levels with the constant interruptions. But none of these are deal breakers by any means, and Max Payne 3 is a super fun and cinematic experience that manages to do the character proper justice, and delivers a super high quality third-person shooter all without any help from Remedy at all, which is very impressive. Good work, Rockstar. But with that, you know what channel this is, and you know what's next. It's time for the series ranking, and we're starting out on the attack. And the worst game in the Max Payne series is Max Payne 1. Now, I hate that I have to do this, but I can't really put Max Payne 1 anywhere but third place. Even though it was the one that started it all, had challenging yet fun and dynamic combat with some killer mechanics like bullet time and shoot dodging, a cool as ice noir story wrapped in some sweet Norse mythological overtones, with some pretty sweet and varied levels, and with a healthy bit of goofiness to balance it all out. The game is also the oldest and crustiest of them all, and it has more than a few dubious design choices, like these extended slow-mo dream sequences, and almost troll-like kill traps and ridiculously overpowered boss enemies. Seriously though, who looked at this slow-motion bloodshell platform and was like, yeah, this is fire, ship it. The gameplay is very solid, extremely so considering it's a 2001 game, but the shooting feels the least impactful and satisfying in the series here, and shoot dodging and bullet time feel lethargic. Your weapons can feel like inaccurate pea shooters at times, and Max will be getting his ass clapped by juiced up bullets and disjointed explosions pretty frequently. But despite these issues, and this game is by no means perfect, I still really enjoyed this game overall, and I even enjoyed the challenge it brings at times, thanks to most of the game's bullshit being mitigated by the ability to freely save, letting you bash your head against any challenge until you eventually beat it in any way you want. And I felt pretty big and huge after finishing it, and I felt like I just completed a sort of rite of gaming passage, humbling myself before the granddaddy of modern third-person shooters. And it was a pretty great ride. 8 out of 10. And in second place, we've got the third and last, Max Payne 3. And this one was really close, but Max Payne 3 falls into the second place spot just slightly, despite having the best shooting and shoot dodging in the entire series, and having a great story with a fantastic performance by James McCaffrey, on top of a great selection of varied and interesting levels that take you from Hoboken to Sao Paulo. Max Payne 3 just has a few slight issues holding it back from the top spot. The series has gone from a kinetic, movement and bullet time momentum-based shooter to a really solid, yet really familiar third-person shooter with a shoot-dodge move, which makes the moment-to-moment gameplay slower and overall less dynamic than in previous games. Max is slower than he's ever been here, and the limited weapon selection is disappointing no matter how you look at it. And the constant cutscene interruptions in the levels can really bog down the game's pace at times, as you get control ripped away from you at regular intervals so Max can just walk a few steps into the next room or the next area, so you can proceed through the rest of the level, which can disengage you from the game pretty easily. But despite these issues, this is still a really fantastic game, and I've never felt more connected to Max until this game. And if you and Max aren't on the same page by the end and are both blasting through the airport with rage, I don't know what to tell you. It's a great package, and I find myself coming back to it every few years or so. Really great stuff. 8.7 out of 10. And in first place in the best game in the Max Payne series, we've got Max Payne 2. And Max Payne 2 is simply the pinnacle of Max Payne for me. It is the fully realized version of Remedy's vision for the character and his abilities. The gameplay feels like a tightened up and refined version of the first game's gameplay with improved gunplay, shoot dodging, and the best version of bullet time in the entire series to let you absolutely jizz on these goons, all without the first game's ridiculous death traps and pack-a-punch bosses that shit all over you. Every death here felt understandable and a result of bad play, not because you didn't realize there'd be a flying gas canister that you have 1 second to react to. And the story here is really solid too, despite it also feeling a bit fast and loose like the first game's story. It has a solid emotional core with Max and Mona's doomed relationship. Vlad was a really fun antagonist, if not too surprising to see his evil turn. And we get a deeper look into Max's psyche and get a better understanding of him with some really solid poetic dialogue from Max's inner monologue and his more intricate and thankfully way less platforming dream sequences. My only issue with this game is that I wish it was even longer and had a few more varied level locations, as I would have loved an extra 2 to 3 hours of this game's campaign. But this is probably the best issue you could have, and Max Payne is a highly replayable series with its unlockable difficulties, and this one is the most replayable out of them all. But simply, it's peak. 9.5 out of 10. But with that, that's all I got for you today, and thank you very much for watching if you're still here. I'm definitely a bigger Remedy fan than ever after playing all these games, and I'm really glad I did. It was like getting into gaming history a little bit, but it was still a really fun time. These games are great, even like 20 fucking years later. But I'll leave you with that. NFL Iceberg is next, and I love you all. Goodbye.